And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bash us, him.
Attention to roll call.
That's right, everybody. Good morning. Eastern time, 8:05. Of course, we're live, 5:05 on the Pacific Coast. Good morning, everybody. This is going to be a great show. We're going to have former New York City Deputy Commissioner for Intelligence and Investigation, Sarena Townsend. She's going to be on the show today. She'll be live with us. So if you know anything about her background, it'd be a great conversation. If not, take a look right now. You can find her on Wikipedia and get a little information about Sarena and about her work as a commissioner with the Department of Corrections. So, John, I think it's going to be a who's who for 2025 for appearances on the Finest Unfiltered. We're going to be skyrocketing. Hopefully we get some movement by rocket fuel, just like they do with the NYPD. And we'll be on our way 2025. And thank you to our friends and listeners helping us grow.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we had a bunch of people reached out to us. We had some mayoral candidates press teams. So we're going to set up some more mayoral interviews for the New York City mayor. So that should be interesting, run through some other platforms. I think Sarena is going to be a very interesting guest. She was a former deputy commissioner for intelligence and investigation. We gotta find out from her, but I think she was more like the deputy commissioner of trials with like a little bit of IB in there. So I think they operate a little bit differently than the New York City Police Department. But I'm curious to learn that. But she was terminated on the Eric Adams administration. And when I heard her story, I've interacted with her online a few times, but a bunch of you guys have been sending me her TikToks. And when I didn't know who she was or her past, and then when I was listening to her and her story, I'm like, wow, this is pretty interesting because it's like a little peek into the window of how corruption's been allowed to flourish inside of New York City agencies. And I think what happened to her is really you could see that have happened across all agencies. Full disclosure, I've had a lot of correction officers reach out to me, and pretty upset about the interview. But hey, this is what this platform is. This is called Unfiltered, and we allow guests on here. We come on. We don't shy away from people that you don't like or we don't like. We're respectful to everyone. We give everybody a voice, everybody a platform, and I think that's what makes the podcast interesting. So I'm super excited to have her on. She's going to be joining us at 8:30. Few things I think that we're going to have to do episodes on, but I think we could talk about before she jumps on today.
Well, I know she received a lot of opposition from the union, and the union in Department of Corrections has a much more powerful position than the unions of the NYPD do in comparison when it comes to the politics and the administration of the Department of Corrections. So I know she received an extreme amount of opposition, which will lead to a great interview. But I don't understand. For me, I don't understand why. And the same thing, I was getting a lot of phone calls, a lot of questions, why you having Sarena on, and a lot of opposition. I won't say what some of the people said. But I said, that's an even better opportunity to have her on the show. Now we have a long platform where we could actually ask some questions, and she could tell her story, tell about her experience, and actually give her perspective with her First Amendment in comparison to actually working for the administration, talk about maybe the politics that she faced, maybe give, as I always say, opposition meets opportunity, and actually hear her out. And that's the beauty about this podcast. I think that we're willing to have opposition and minds alike. And I think that's the pathway forward to have these real conversations. So shout out to Rich Raj, $20 coffee and donuts. That's right. Good morning, brother. How you doing? Good morning, John, Eric, and everyone. Outstanding. Good morning, everyone. And that's my thoughts on that, John. I think that we shouldn't just have conversations with people that have the same views, but we should have conversations with opposition. And that's the way forward.
No, I agree. But I'm telling you, I think when Sarena comes on here, you're going to see that her views are very similar to ours. And what happened to her is almost exactly what happened to us. It almost mirrors it, dude. It's like it's a mirror. It's really a sneak peek into this administration. So I think it's going to be a great interview. But a lot of crazy stuff came out yesterday, right? We were telling a few months ago on this podcast, we were hinting maybe somebody should look at the Craylow rentals, the confidential rental cars that are in the NYPD that have been being abused. It's been reported in the news that they were being abused by the upper echelon of the NYPD. They were using that to pick out their own, Dodge Durangos, Jeep Wagoneers. That program has been put up for exactly what it is, confidential vehicles, in order to conduct investigations. And that's been abused, obviously, because Eric Adams and his Scout friends are running New York City, and they're using it like their own leasing program. And there's actually been other rumors that wives have been driving around with them, girlfriends, children, friends, and allegations of that. So it's came out in the paper. I'm not shocked by it at all. I think, again, I think that's just another PR move by Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch. It's already out there. They know that there's going to be a scandal drop on it, so they're just going to get ahead of it before that does. What are your thoughts about that, the confidential rental?
Well, before I want to get into that, I just want to say shout out to Tom Joyce. Tom Joyce, I didn't know you were a fellow landsman, Jewish. You used the word shekels, something my grandmother used to use. I love it. Hysterical. Tom Joyce, good morning, brother. $20 coffee and donuts. Tom says, sorry, I'm late. I had to duck the bride. She was barking. You listen to that Finest podcast thing again? So here's my Jewish part. So here are some shekels for coffee and donuts. Thank God for my MCU debit card slush fund. Outstanding, Tom Joyce. We appreciate it, brother. Great friend to the podcast. I think it's interesting. Before we go ahead, so active retired members, I'm sure you're aware of CRALO, but if you're not, it's just an acronym for Confidential Rental and Leasing Office. So for the NYPD, that's where they lease and rental cars and that are distributed to executives. So it's quite interesting. It's just another spoke on the wheel when it comes to potential corruption with this upper echelon. And I think the more that we talk about this, so we see that there's different facets of potential corruption and misconduct, misuse, abuse of this department. That's basically what we have. Is we just have a complete abuse of this department right now on all different levels. And I think eventually down the road, I think people will start to agree with me that it appears that, I'll revise what I said. I said all chiefs are compromised at this point. And when I started to look at some numbers, I realized, okay, maybe I'm wrong. And I'll tell you why. You ready for this, John? About half of the chiefs that are actually employed by the NYPD are on terminal leave. Or as we could say, they're right at their timeout. So I would say, I'll say, oh, you know what? You're right. Maybe half the chiefs are compromised. I started looking it up, how many chiefs there are. And I was looking into it. And John, I'm not kidding. About half the chiefs are right at their timeout, 2 and 3 years worth of vacation time.
What's the number, do you know?
I think it's about 120 chiefs. I think about half.
Right.
Yeah, I think about half of them are not even.
And 60 of them are on terminal. That makes sense.
So the ones that are there active, they're compromised. And we start to see, you know what? There's potential pay for play with promotion. We're hearing rumors about that. Now this.
There's definitely some chiefs on terminal with some stories to tell, though. There's definitely a lot of chiefs on terminal with some stories to tell, though. So I think so a little bit more than half.
Yeah, just about.
A little bit more than half.
So what do you think about that? Also, by the way, Tom, shout out to you, $1.99 coffee donuts. Invite Juju. Sure, we invited Juju many times, but we don't even know who Juju is. Right?
I invited Juju in person. He's never showed up. I don't know what happened to him.
Juju says he lives in Starrett City. So
yeah.
So, John, what do you think about that, though? Do you think that's something that is that a good incentive, or do you think that should be changed also? And not to get totally on a different topic, do you think that's good that a majority of manpower is actually on terminal leave? Do you think that they should just be paid out vacation time and be retired?
It just is what it is. If you're not a 2-star or above, you don't get paid out for that time. And, if you're a 2-star above, you get paid out for that time. It's just kind of the nature of the beast. The only thing I think that needs to be changed is that somebody hurts their ankles 3 weeks ago because they're overweight. And next thing you know, they put in for 3 quarters and they're going to get a ginormous pension when they're, let's say maybe they were the chief of patrol or now the chief of department, let's just say, and it's a complete scam. And again, it just shows the integrity of these individuals. They're scamming the system. Then they're going to go scam the Social Security system. I mean, people belong in jail for that. Let's not call that this what. Let's just call it what it is. I don't mind people accrued a ton of time and they're burning their time. It is what it is. You get up to the rank of chief. You spent most of your life there. You have years on the books. is what it is, just the nature of the beast. I have a bigger problem with the three-quarter system being abused, and then the guys that actually get injured and the guys that actually have problems are treated like criminals, when the real criminals are the ones that are wearing that are supposedly the chiefs, the leaders. Just it.
I gotta laugh. And by the way, Ethan Hunt says, "What is terminal leave?" So, terminal leave, they're riding vacation time out, so they're still on the books, but they're not actually actively working. So they're still employed by the department, but they're actually just there on vacation time until their actual retirement date. So they're not actually coming back to the job, but they do enjoy they still enjoy the perks of it. Right? If you're a chief and you're out on your vacation time, I'm sure if you want to walk in and use one of those Craylow cars, it's probably available to you.
Or your wife needs a car, or your girlfriend, or your goon.
It's that's interesting. Just think about the dollar amount of what that might cost. That's pretty wild.
Yeah, no, it's disgusting, man. It's absolutely disgusting what's happening. Other thing before Sarena jumps on, we only got a little bit. Kathy Hochul comes out. I guess Kathy Hochul is the police commissioner now. She runs the NYPD. So the transit deployment plan ends about a week ago. They tell everyone, yeah, no more transit overtime. You're limited to this. And then Kathy Hochul comes out and says, transit's back a week later. Shocker. I'm shocked. I'm just shocked. What do you think about Hochul's plan to have? Originally, she said she was just going to have a cop on every subway car that was riding, on every subway train that was riding, and cops at every station. And then, that was revised to 2 cops, which I got to give Tish props for. She said 2 cops. I was saying, so you're going to we're going back to Eric Adams' dumb plan, having 1 cop on the train. We're just going to wait till there's a dead cop. But actually, Tish clarified. She said there's going to be 2 cops on the trains. What do you think about it?
Well, I think this is reflective of what we've been saying about Jessica Tish, right? So Jessica Tish, we thought, including myself, that being a billionaire heiress, connected to the 43rd largest, richest family in the entire country, that she would have so much power and leverage that she could actually run the police department as a police commissioner. But we're seeing that there's so much interception and injection into her leadership with just completely the entire Adams administration. I've never seen this police administration or anyone like it where everyone has their hand in it and pulling the strings with the police department. And the police department, again, it's amazing. John, you and I spoke about this on prior episodes. It's amazing that it hasn't been completely broken, that the system is actually pretty strong. If you look at it, right, the foundation of the police department, the system is actually pretty strong because it's still functioning. Because arguably anyone that understands leadership or anyone in business would say, how is this system actually still flowing when there's no direct leadership? The fact that Kathy Hochul is actually going to direct the movement of the police department is insane to me. How does she know exactly what's going on with funding with the police department, manpower? How are they balancing it out? I mean, now it's at the point where these politicians are just cherry picking and moving things around without any actual intimate knowledge of what goes on in the administration of the NYPD. I mean, Jessica Tish just spoke at a press conference saying how they're going to tail back on overtime and they're going to utilize their presence on straight time in the subways. And we're already suffering and hemorrhaging with the manpower. How is that going to happen? This doesn't even make sense. Or is this just virtual signaling? We'll just lie to people and tell them that there's going to be a cop in every train, because it doesn't seem like it could be possible.
I don't think it's possible at all. I don't think you're going to have a cop on every train. I don't think you're going to have a cop at every train platform. I think this is just more of the same. Let's just surge into the transit. We're going to do it now in the midnight hours instead of just in the daytime. Obviously, the NYPD doesn't have the manpower to do that. That's glaring, obviously. It's glaringly obvious when you look at the overtime numbers compared to the people that are salaried. I mean, when you look at that alone, it just shows that they're lying to you about the numbers of police officers. When you look at that overtime report that Sam Anton unleashed, to me, shows more of the lack of manpower, because I hone in on the fact that, all the people assigned, that all the units that fall under the chief of department only account for $58 million in salary. That means that there is a big problem with manpower, and whatever those reported numbers are not actually the numbers. $58 million, that seems very low to me. And then when you look at that compared to the overtime, and the overtime's 10 times that amount, it's a 10-to-1 ratio of overtime versus salary that the chief of department's office is spending. You got to sit there and say, all right, there's a severe crisis of manpower in the NYPD. So I don't think that this, we could just replay what we said at the original onset of this transit program, because it's just more of the same. It's you'll get a superficial drop in crime as long as there's cops in those subway stations and on those trains. But overall, it does absolutely nothing. It just displaces crime temporarily until this goes away in 6 months. And we spent hundreds of millions of dollars to basically run a PR campaign that has zero long-term effect on crime. So it's definitely more of the same. And it's gonna, again, you're gonna continue to see, crime's down with a little asterisk on the bottom of it, and crime's going to continue to jack up. And then when they pull these officers out of whatever high-profile subway stations and highway train cars that they're going to have them ride in, because you're not getting them in the South Bronx, you're not getting them in the middle of Brooklyn. So wherever the high-profile are, yeah, you'll see a little downturn in crime in those areas, but once they're pulled, boom, crime skyrockets right back, and it might even surge worse. It might even surge worse. Because there's been zero plan for 3 years, and everyone knows it. There's been zero plan to deal with the recidivism. Everybody knows it. It's a free for all. Eric Adams' administration is a free for all, and he got caught out last night with I think he was out with Bruce Blakeman in Nassau. Emily Nigo, reporter, she posted a picture of him at about like 9 o'clock. He doesn't know. They're smiling, they're laughing, they're out to eat in Long Island, they're joking. So then it makes its rounds. Everybody starts writing about it. And then about 11:30 at night, out of the Eric Adams Twitter account, the New York City mayor account, oh, I had a great meeting with Nassau County executive, and we were talking about gangs in Long Island. It's like, dude, stop. You were kissing up for a fucking pardon. Excuse me. You were kissing up for a pardon. We all know it. Crazy stuff.
Going back to the cars, I think Rob Luca makes a great point. Great point. Category 1 cars, whether department autos or leases, are all approved by the police commissioner. So who is she investigating? I think that's outstanding. That's great. That's so true. I was thinking about this also. Like, who's going to investigate this? Is it going to be the police commissioner? Is it going to be Group 1, who's completely compromised? And now we have a whole new crew, Group 1, like it matters.
Yeah, I find it funny that like on the Eric Adams administration, they really actually never really want to get ahead of anything. They want it to appear that they're getting ahead of corruption, but they never actually do. They'll give you like half in, oh, we're investigating this, but they don't really get down and dirty into it because someone said, we made a clip yesterday about the part with Sheriff Miranda that we were talking about. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, imagine you're the mayor and you don't instantly have every one of your investigative bodies investigating New York City Sheriff after that testimony. Could you imagine that? I mean, dude, I don't care if I grew, I'd be like, bro, you better have some good answers. This just better be a huge mistake. I don't know what the hell's going on here. And he did nothing. And then everything, he's just allowing the feds and state and everyone else to investigate his city. And he's not investigating them. He's like, we follow the law. We're going to let these investigations take place. It's like, dude, forget you're following the law and you're going to let these investigations. What are you doing? What are you doing? And like corruption flourishes because of that. So she's looking at how the cars and who distributed the cars. Listen, I get it. I'm not gonna point the finger at her because she just stepped in. If I made you the police commissioner, however those cars went out, now it's your bag. You're holding it, right? But she gave him, I think, till June 2025 to correct it. June or July of 25 to correct all the cars and remove it from the executives. I mean, I'm sorry. Give me a week. I could have this problem solved real quick. I'll do it for free. I'll come in. I'll fly in. Let me know. I'll be in charge of the cars. You can make me the chief car guy.
I agree with you. I think that this is all virtual signaling. Let's give the illusion that we're actually investigating corruption by following it up with more corruption or different corruption. Tom, shout out to you, brother. $1.99 coffee donuts. This is actually a little bit off topic, but it's a great question. Tom says, did you guys know one another on the job? And great chemistry. Thank you so much, Tom. We appreciate it. Actually, John and I worked together as rookies on the job when we were brand new. I came on in January 2004. John showed up 6 months later, and then we worked together as rookies. So I had a great opportunity. I started out what was called Impact back then, which was basically they sent brand new cops to impact zones, which were zones that were considered high crime areas, and you walked the beat on foot for 6 months. And then after that, I had the opportunity to go to patrol, and then they needed 2 guys to stay back. So they asked if I would stay back, kind of be like a mentor to brand new guys also. I'm brand new myself, and I'm a mentor to the guys who are brand new also. So I got to be the big fish in a little pond. So sure, why not? So I stayed back for 6 months. And John and I worked together as rookies. So then after that, John, you went on to excuse me. I think after that, John, you went out to the 1, 2, 3. They started moving guys out. And then throughout our careers, we'd always run into each other. John always had a serious face on it. But no, we'd always run into each other throughout the job. And actually, I went to work to Manhattan. I worked in the Bronx. John worked in Brooklyn. But we always had a great chemistry. And then sure enough, when I was in my last year of my career and I didn't think I was going to make it out, John was already speaking out about the mandate. So, I heard about, there's this guy, Johnny Mack, keeps talking about the mandate. Obviously, it was the hot topic. I'm like, who's Johnny Mack? And I was like, busy work. And then finally, somebody showed me a picture. This is Johnny Mack. Well, that's my buddy. So that's when I reached out to John. I said, John, listen, I don't know if you remember, I told you, I don't know if I'm going to make it out of here. Honestly, I'm trying. But if I do or I don't, I'm coming on the podcast. I want to tell my story. And my goal at that point, I figured with the knowledge that I have on intrusive police work to start a consultant company and help the guys out. And sure enough, it morphed into a podcast, working together, and it's amazing how things turn out. So, Tom, thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So fun times. Well, 55 Bowen, 160 Park Hill, Stapleton, Port Richmond, Mariners Harbor, 55 Holland. So yeah, it was good times, and then I learned my lesson in volunteering. So when we got to, I forget where like the inauguration into Staten Island was. And I didn't even put Staten Island on my dream sheet. My brother-in-law was a cop for a while already. And he was like, listen, you don't want to work in Staten Island. You live in Staten Island. You know a lot of people in Staten Island, go work in Brooklyn. So I was like, yeah, that makes sense. So I put Brooklyn. Sure enough, I get Staten Island. I'm like, okay. I go 120. I'm like, okay. I could see how this is starting off. So I go to the 120, and they bring us in for like a borough orientation or whatever. And a lieutenant who I winded up working with almost my entire career. Even I was a lieutenant with him actually, but he was the SOL on the 120 at the time. And he like sold me on volunteering for impact. I'll teach you how to arrest people. We're going to teach you how to fight crime. We're going to teach you how to be cops. You could learn the answer in the 911 stuff, but we're going to put you right in the mix of it. You're going to be in high crime areas. So I volunteer. And that was my first lesson in don't ever volunteer for anything, because after, I think we did about 8 months. I don't know if we did 6 months. I think we did a little bit longer, whatever it was. Right after that, they took all the impact guys and sent them out. They're like, you guys actually belong to the borough. You volunteered to go to the borough. You don't actually belong to the 120. The guys that stayed in field training, they belong to the 120. And I was like, that's not right. I was like, so I volunteer to go do the job, and then you're kicking me out, but whatever. So then they sent me the 123, and yeah. But I always knew Eric. I always knew him. That's why when he started getting smeared in the paper, I was like, get the hell out of here. You're not the most complained cop. There's no way that's happening.
I tell you right now, that was the best time I had the job. By the way, Patrick Donahue says I stayed around to get my 8-pick vacations, which is hilarious. There was a couple of reasons I stayed on. One, I knew I got to be the big fish in the little pond. I always wanted to be a mentor to the other guys. Dennis Myra and John Fitzgibbons, they were in the impact. They were the senior guys. They were teaching us, and those guys were super cool. I wanted to stay around. Those guys had me laughing every day, and they abused us. But I couldn't stop laughing. I literally I couldn't wait to get to work. They never knew. I never told them back then, obviously. But they never knew. Now, now that I'm sure if they ever hear about the podcast, but they had me laugh. I couldn't wait to get back to work because those guys would have me laughing all day. I remember driving into work and getting cut off and get like, who the hell is this maniac? Meanwhile, it's Dennis Meyer give me the finger out the window. Or John Fitzgibbons. And those guys had me laughing, but they taught us a lot, man. If you really think about it, those guys were pretty damn good. And Sergeant Linton back then, just names, these guys were amazing. And I was a religious guy. And he used to always do a prayer at roll call. I was like, oh, wow. I mean, you really made me feel like a family and you were brand new. And I was the most fun on the job. And I won't mention his name, but John, I don't know if you know the story. I think you do. But one time, every day we're on foot, but one time they gave us a van. I was like, oh, so excited. I got a van. And I forget now, I was actually a company sergeant in the NYPD in the academy. So I picked the 112 because I grew up in Stapleton. That probably wasn't a great idea working in the same area I grew up. I had to lock up some guys I knew. But it was interesting, right? So I got the van one day, and I'll never forget. It was me and a couple of guys, and we had fun. So we work in Stapleton, but we went to Park Hill to pick up one of the guys we found in Stapleton on Broad Street. Remember, there was kind of like abandoned spots between buildings. And I'll never forget, there was a guy passed out in the middle of the weeds between these two abandoned buildings, and it looked like he was dead. So we picked up one of the rookies also. The Sarge said you have to sit on this DOA. So everybody knows when someone's dead before the morgue comes, the funeral home comes, cop has to watch him. So we dropped the cop off. He knows who he is, which is hilarious. So we watch him walk over. He said like a prayer, and he turned around. And he stood at parade rest. And we were in the car. We were brand new. We were laughing hysterical. He's standing there. And we waited about 20 minutes. So finally we picked him up and let him know it was a joke. As we picked him up, the guy gets up and looks at him and just walks away. It was hilarious, man. We had a good time. Those were the good times where we had pranks at each other. It was a fun job. And unfortunately, you play those pranks now, you get in trouble. But it was a good time.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, great story. All right, so listen, we have Sarena Townsend's going to join us now. She's the former New York City Department of Corrections Deputy of Commissioner for Intelligence. Excited to have her on. Bring her up to the stage now. Serena, thank you for joining us this morning. How's everything?
Hey, thank you so much for having me. Good to see you guys.
Yeah, no, great. So Serena, could you give us a little bit of your background? And we were actually talking a little bit before. I'm a little confused about what the Deputy Commissioner of Intelligence and Investigation, because in the NYPD we have a Deputy Commissioner of Internal Affairs or Chief of Internal Affairs, and then we have a Deputy Commissioner of Trials.
Yep.
Your role was more like both. The trials? Like, what was that?
I was both. And, look, I got a little flack
right?
for
That's
that.
What we had.
Yeah, the unions didn't love that. They were like, you're the judge, jury, and executioner. But the truth of the matter is there were a lot of checks and balances above me. So, like, any decision that I made had to go through the commissioner. But, yeah, essentially I was IAB for DOC and also in charge of trials. But it's a little different at DOC because we farm out our trials to the New York City OATH, Office of Administrative Trials and Hearings. So those decisions essentially would get made by a judge at OATH and then have to be confirmed by the commissioner. So that stuff was kind of out of my hands, which is why it wasn't such a conflict. But yeah, I had a pretty heavy job. I had to do a lot at DOC. Before that, I was a prosecutor though for 10 years. So in Brooklyn.
No.
Serena, it's great to meet you. Outstanding. Listen, I read a lot about your bio and about your experience with the Department of Corrections.
Yeah.
I just want to dive right into it because I read a lot about it, and I know it was at the height when you were working for the Department of Corrections about potential abuse of being out sick for Department of Corrections. Yeah. Obviously, it was a huge issue with manpower at the time. So the information that I heard, correct me if I'm wrong, is that you kind of eased up on it. We're actually helping. From what I've heard, I know you received a lot of opposition from the union.
I did.
What I heard is that you actually helped that out.
I was trying. Yeah.
What data was analyzed to get this idea that Department of Corrections was abused in sick time?
So the hardest part about analyzing cases and deciding whether misconduct happened or didn't happen was the fact that I was relying on flawed data, right? Like that's probably why you're asking me that question, because my investigators, and I had a really great investigator handling this alongside me, former detective. Her name is Maureen Sheehan. I don't know if you ever worked with her. Fabulous fabulous detective. And we were trying to do the right thing. We were trying to find the people who really were out sick, in a misconduct sort of way. Like they were just thumbing their nose at the job rather than people who were actually sick. It was very difficult to make that determination because we were relying on the data coming out of the jails and the admin staff who were overseeing that. And if you read any monitor's report, you'll know that management was just horrible. We would be getting information where they're like, yeah, you got to go for this guy, this girl, that girl, she hasn't been here. And then we would kind of do our own extra layer of investigating. And we're like, that's not true at all. Like this chick is out with cancer. Like this person it was crazy. And we're like, we don't work with these people, so we don't know them. We're trying to figure it out, but you do work with these people. You're in the jail with them. How do you not know that they're legitimately out sick? But yeah, we had some fun. We did some sting operations. We found some people partying in clubs when they weren't, when they were out sick and stuff like that. So it was on both sides of the spectrum. And we tried to balance the scales as best as we could.
Crazy. So Sarena, could you tell us like what like so you're there, you're in your role, new administration comes in, like where you're at, what you're doing, and kind of what happens to you? Because I before, like, I really knew who you were. Like we had interacted online a few times, and I didn't know who you were, and I was like, wow, she seems to not like Eric Adams like me, and
picked up on that, huh?
And then a lot of people started sending me a TikTok, and I was like, whoa. And I was like watching, I didn't know your backstory. And I was like, I was like blown away. I was like, wow, and then it really is like a window into things. So could you just like put us into you, like what was going on at that time?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I am not a conspiracy theorist. And I think you guys appreciate that because as cops, for the most part, if something makes sense and it's common sense and A led to B, which led to C, that's what happened. I'm not into this whole like, oh, everybody's out to get somebody else. But it turned out that that's kind of what happened to me. So the unions did not like me at DOC because of my position that I was, IAB, I was going after their members. But the truth is, if you want to really know, they didn't really have any problem with me so long as I left their executive staff alone, right? They didn't actually care about their members very much at all. They didn't really come to me about most anybody unless they were cronies of theirs. But once I started kind of banging the hammer against their people, all of a sudden I was public enemy number 1, 2, 3, and 4. So when the new administration came in, and it turned out that, Luis Molina was going to be commissioner, he started kind of getting in there December time before the actual new year to try to get to know what was going on. I come to find out actually years later that he and Mayor Adams and the union presidents actually had a meeting before all of this went down and discussed me, where the unions were basically like, the union presidents were like, you got to get rid of her. She's terrible. They were like holding, like they were chanting my name in these like public things where they were like, Sarena Townsend's got to go. Like you can look it up online. They hated me. So basically they told the commissioner, you got to get rid of her. And what ended up happening is I was actually interviewed along with all of the other executive staff by Tim Pearson. You might know that person. He came in and yeah, he came in with a binder. Okay. He was at DOC headquarters. He had a binder of all of us. There were pictures of us, our bios, and each of us had to interview with him. And we did. And my interview actually went very well because I was a very hands-on person. I knew my stats. I knew everything that was going on. I had answers to the questions. And after the interview, which was also attended by Molina virtually and some other people virtually, he pulled me aside. He actually took me out so that no one else could see and was like, do you want to stay here? And I was like, I mean, I do. I have some unfinished business. So yeah, I'd like to stay a little bit. And he's like, don't worry, I got you. It sucks to be the head of IAB. I know people are going to hate you, but don't listen to that noise. You're going to be just fine. So I was like, all right, that's cool. That plus I also had the federal monitor go to the federal judge and sign an order saying, a court order, federal court order saying that I could not be fired unless A, there was a bona fide reason, and B, the commissioner had to speak with the monitor before firing me. So I was like, okay, I know I'm hated, but I think I'm good. Well, about 2 weeks before Molina took over, he came to my office to have a one-on-one. All right. This was like the most surreal thing that ever has happened to me in my life. He comes into the office. I'm like, all right, I'm prepared to have this conversation. You know, I've done really good work here. We've had this like huge backlog that I've been able to get rid of. And we still have like a little smaller backlog that I already have a plan to get rid of. Everything is honky-dory. He comes in and he's like, all right, you have all these cases. How are you going to get rid of 2,000 disciplinary cases in my first 100 days? That's literally what he says. And I'm like, 1,000 cases in your first 100 days is not possible. Like, I don't know if you guys are aware of the process.
Oh, absolutely.
But
yeah.
No. Right. Go ahead. You go ahead. I know you want to say something. Please interject.
I was the most complaint cop, so I know about the process. I know
1,000 of them were yours.
Look,
yeah.
No, go ahead. We appreciate it.
Yeah. So like, listen, these are cases that were already substantiated. They were cases, as you guys probably know, Rikers is all cameraed up. So we have video of all of these incidents. You got the monitor breathing down my neck, you know, discipline. I was in the unfortunate position of having to answer to the monitor who wanted more discipline. And, you know, everybody else who was like, they don't understand us. They don't really get the job, and certain things that we have to do. And I appreciated that as a former prosecutor myself. And I was like trying to work both ends. Like, listen, you have to be reasonable. You have to be reasonable. Anyway, those cases were legitimate cases. So I was like, listen, that's kind of out of my hands. This has to go to court and they have to either decide to take a plea or I have to go to trial. I can't magically force them to sign a plea. I can't get rid of those cases. I can't force people. They have due process.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. They have due process. So
what is due process?
I don't know. I don't
know.
Is due process real? Is a figment of our imagination, possibly. So I'm like, this guy doesn't get it, you know, which is crazy because he's a former cop. He's also former DI at the Brooklyn DA's office when I was there. He did nothing, by the way. He was a nobody. And I'm like, you obviously don't get it. So I'm sitting there thinking like, all right, just be cool. This is your new boss. Like, try to explain this to him in plain words. And I'm explaining like, you know, listen, here's the situation. I understand you want to get rid of the backlog. I have a plan. I'd love to sit down with you and explain it to you. But in the interim, like, we also have the consent decree that we have to contend with. And I can't just lowball cases or you are going to be found in contempt of that order. Like, we can't just bulldoze shit. We have to like work. You got to like be smooth about it. You got to like figure out what's going on. I said, why don't we sit and talk about, forget it. I'm coming up with all these ideas. His eyes are just glazing over. And he goes, all right, so how do you get rid of 2,000 cases in my first 100 days? Literally. So I'm like, this guy doesn't get it. I said, the only way I could do that, like unilaterally, is if you're telling me I got to dismiss cases. Like, you're basically telling me I got to just dismiss them or give them like a nothing, you know, slap on the wrist. Again, with the use of force cases in particular, we can't just do that. We have a consent decree we got to fit into. And he just was like, not happy, clearly not happy after that meeting. And I was like, what am I going to do? After the meeting, he said some other stuff in the meeting that like was really not cool. And I was like, I went to my number 2, who is Ruben Benitez, who is actually my client after all of this was done, because he got demoted illegally and unfairly too. You know, the pain of being Team Townsend. And I was like, we're screwed. This guy doesn't get it at all. I was like, I don't know what we're going to do. Meanwhile, I'm an idiot. I show up, you know, his first day on the job, Monday. He's like, yeah, okay, we'll meet. We'll talk about this. I show up Monday with my whole plan. I got like all this stuff ready for him for our meeting. I don't hear from him. There's no, calendar invite, nothing. Instead, at like 2:00, I get a call from HR's deputy commissioner who like I was friendly with. And she's like, hey, can you come to my office? Which was weird because like I said, we're friendly. And I was like, this doesn't sound right. Like this doesn't look good. So I'm like, what's going on? So I go, and the second I walk in, it's her and her assistant commissioner. And I see this like piece of paper with a gold seal on her desk. And I was like, I can't believe this shit. I'm getting fired. And that was it. I got fired. I said, all right, well, how much time do I have? Because I know other people were let go and they were given some time. And she was like, yeah, it's immediate. And I was like, are you serious? Like I'm wearing my shield around my neck. I'm like, you're taking my shield right now? And she's like, yep. And I was like, okay, like my keys, my laptop, like all that. She's like, yep, I can walk you to your office and you can just take your bag. Someone else will pack up your stuff. You got to go now. And I was like, does he realize he's violating a court order by doing this? Like, does he, because I knew he's stupid. Like, I knew he's stupid. He could have fired. He's so dumb because he could have fired me easily in like 3 weeks, you know, build a case against me, whatever it is. Do it like everybody else always tries to do it. I was like, does he know? Like, can I talk to him? She's like, he doesn't want to talk to you. I was like, okay. And I was perp walked out and that was that. And here we are.
So Sarena, so he asked you to stay originally.
Pearson, yeah.
Pearson's like, oh, I got you. You're good.
Yeah.
Then they tell you you have this backlog of cases. We want it gone in 100 days. We don't care what you have to do. We don't care how illegal it is or it's not.
Yeah.
You were actually handed a lot of cases over the sick policy where you actually protected members, investigating them properly. See, like the thing for me is that like, and there's a lot of people on this chat saying a lot of nasty things, but
that's okay.
I think the thing that people misunderstand about internal affairs is that it really is a great thing to have. And it's something that everybody in law enforcement should want. Because you're given the privilege of being investigated by somebody with a law enforcement and background that's going to look at your perspective of it and give you due process. If there was not an internal affairs and you weren't investigated by internal affairs, the minute a prisoner, a perpetrator, somebody that you arrested, a civilian, anybody makes an allegation against you, the only recourse at that point is to go directly to a district attorney's office. So you're basically going to the Super Bowl every day. And if somebody gives bad information, like, hey, this person's scamming sick, and you're actually getting chemotherapy and not doing that, like you wouldn't be able to get through that. Unfortunately, the nature of police work and law enforcement, and I'm sure it's even worse in the DOC, is that these allegations are horrific. So then because you will not circumvent due process ultimately, you're pushed out.
Yeah. And the truth of the matter is, the funniest part is, you know, the unions begged Molina to get rid of me because they wanted better outcomes, right? Molina then ended up firing more DOC staff than anybody else in the past, and then went like and bragged about it. Like he was proud of that. So I'm like, dude, like everybody is going to hate you now. Everyone's going to hate you. And the truth is, you're right. And not only would they have had to go to the DA if there's no internal affairs, but what about the lawsuits that come against you guys? What about when those lawsuits happen and you could use my reports to exonerate you? You can say, look, this was already investigated internally by, an unbiased staff, an unbiased team. And this was the outcome. We didn't get disciplined at work because they found that we did everything right. And look, it's funny because people only realize it after the fact, but once I was gone and most of my team left, that amazing detective that I spoke about earlier, Moshian, she drove in and quit that day because she was like, this place is going to go to crap after. And a lot of my people did. A lot of my people quit and they left. And now the place is a shit show. The place is buried with way more backlogged cases, people who don't necessarily know what they're doing. They had to hire new people, so they're green. They don't get what's going on. And meanwhile, with my law firm now, half of my caseload are law enforcement officers. And I love them because they realize they're like, this is the girl who knows the department. This is the person who gets it. She's the one who was fighting for us. And now she's going up against the people who used to work for her, and she knows how to destroy them, which I do. So, they come to me, and I happily, I mean, they might be watching now, and I love you guys because they're my clients. Law enforcement officers love to have somebody like me on their side. I've been on both sides of the trial room. I've been, prosecutor for most of my career. But you got to have that perspective in order to be able to argue and help people. And I have the integrity because people know me. They know that I wasn't going to just dismiss those cases out of nowhere. So I just want the right thing done. And I'll be, advocating for my clients no matter who they are. So it really was a shame because as I think you and I, John, we talked about this. What happened to me was simply the first. I was just the first. This happened everywhere under Adams. As you guys know, it happened in PD, plenty. I know that your IAB person also got, the boot. And I don't really know the politics as well because I wasn't in that agency. But, I understand. I see what's going on. He put all of his friends up in the best positions, particularly in ED. And I'm sure you guys have stories. I'm sure you've worked with some of those people and you know that they're criminals.
Absolutely. First of all, I want to thank you for being so forthcoming. That's why I always say I've coined this. We say it constantly, and you'll even see hashtags on the chat. It's pretty funny. I say opposition meets opportunity. You received a lot of opposition for the union as far as your stance, but I appreciate when this is why it was the beauty about the long form podcast platform. It gives you the opportunity to really explain. And your stance when it comes to the sick policy, I think is great because it was so prolific at the time. But it's quite interesting because what you're saying to me is a fair assessment. It makes sense that we want to make sure that if someone needs chemo that has cancer, that they're actually out sick and they're actually being honored and that is being taken care of. And for those that are abusing it, shame on them because it takes away from these people that actually need it. So I agree with you. And then your assessment to say that you're investigating a case and actually exonerate someone and protects them, to me, makes a lot of sense. So
I had those discussions. Yeah,
absolutely. And you receive a lot of opposition here. I'm not going to lie. Some people are saying here. So that's something else I wanted to ask you about is, and what I've heard is that you reopened a lot of cases. So some of the people saying here, you reopened some cases that were 2 and 3 years old. Could you explain?
That's not true.
Is that true? Or is that just an allegation? Was there cases that were reopened?
Can I just tell you something? I would be insane with the amount of cases that I had to handle, thousands with the backlog I inherited. When I started in the position, there were like 12,000 open use of force cases alone. That's just use of force cases, let alone PREA cases, arrests of staff cases, all the other stuff, contraband. I had no time to open up older cases. Why would I add to my caseload? No, none of the older cases that had been dead in the water or were closed, I definitely did not reopen any old cases. What they might be thinking about is that there was a backlog of old cases that I handled and that we tackled. But, it's so funny because I get a lot of crap from people. But you know what? I also got a ton of crap from the Monitor. Because when I came in and there was all of these old ass cases, the Monitor was like, you have to do every single one from soup to nuts. Like, it doesn't matter. And I'm like, you don't understand the amount of cases that are backlogged at this point. If you want me to do that, I'm never going to be in compliance with like doing this in a speedy way. Because they also wanted us to do it within like 120 days. A full investigation on every case. And I'm like, you don't understand. I can't, if you want me to do it soup to nuts, right? So I actually there were thousands of cases that passed the statute of limitations that we have. We have an 18-month statute of limitations at DOC. The Monitor wanted us to continue on with those cases anyway, even though they passed the statute of limitations. And they were like, well, if you uncover a crime, then technically that the statute of limitations doesn't apply. You can still go forward. And I was like, listen to me. We're dumping the cases. They're done. Unless we already did a preliminary investigation on them. It's not like they weren't investigated at all. If they were preliminarily investigated and shelved, they're bullshit. I got rid of them. And then I found myself in the news. The Monitor was like, they got rid of thousands of cases. And I was like, you gave me your blessing to do this. You said they were past the statute of limitations. We had a conversation. You said, listen, I get it. If you ever want to be in compliance and get rid of this backlog and do things timely, I said, let me get rid of those and focus on the active ones. And they were like, okay. Next thing I know, they write a monitor report saying they couldn't believe that we got rid of all of those cases and they weren't investigated and they weren't, adjudicated properly. And I was like, I cannot win. I literally cannot win. So when people talk crap about me at this point, I was sensitive back then. I was. I cried when I was fired. And then they reported that too. And everyone was like, good, she cried. I was sensitive. Now I don't care because I realize no one is going to give me the benefit of the doubt anyway. I just have to do what's right. I'm going to piss off people by doing the right thing, but that's okay with me. It really is. And, I take crap from people a lot, but usually I will tell you this because I will repeat it. I represent a lot of officers now. And I actually really love representing them because I'm a law enforcement, baby. Like I grew up at the DA's office. That was my first job. And I have a kinship with people like that. And when they talk to me, they're like, God damn, you are nothing like what the union said you were. And I'm like, I know, because they did their little tour, the presidents. They were very insecure because they were very upset that people were hiring me, retaining me, paying for my services rather than using the lawyers and the law firms that they provide because I was able to give better service. And so they would go around and say, how can you hire her? She's, public enemy number one. She was against you. You should have heard the things she said about you. And it wasn't true, so I get it. I actually understand why people have this thought about me. But I also say, give me a second, meet me. The second you meet me, you're going to realize you were wrong. And it's all good. I'm not going to hold it against you. It's just the nature of being in the position that I was in,
Yeah, so we got about 800 people on the live chat this morning. Thanks everybody for joining. We got former New York City Department of Corrections Deputy Commissioner for Intelligence Investigation, Sarena Townsend. She's walking us through her story, what happened to her. She now founded her own firm, Townsend Law.
Yes.
If you're on YouTube, if you're on Rumble, if you're on LinkedIn, all of her links for her social media and to contact her firm are in there. So Sarena,
Thanks,
100%. Listen, you were a high profile figure. So I'm not going to lie. I got a ton of messages after I posted this stuff on LinkedIn. I think a lot of people were in the union itself. So
yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
So one of the things that they were asking me to ask you, and you kind of answered it already, but I think if you could just clarify for the audience, they're saying that there were thousands and thousands of cases that you didn't work on and the backlog happened under you. Could you just give us your perspective, like what you stepped into and where and when you left, what did that caseload look like?
I'm going to tell you the whole thing. So what happened was the department entered into this Nunez consent decree. Nunez consent decree basically means that someone was beaten up real bad by correctional officers. It ended up becoming a class action lawsuit, and they settled the lawsuit by entering this consent decree. Part of the consent decree said that there had to be higher discipline and that that the investigation division, which is like IAB, which is what I was in charge of, has to take on more cases. In fact, I did the math because it was insane. And this, by the way, was entered into before I came into the office. This was like 2015. They had this. I was still a DA at the time. They signed this consent decree, and immediately, before the thing was wet, right? Before the signature dried, the effect of that consent decree meant that internal affairs had to go from investigating a select, priority type of case, which was just the really bad cases, really bad injuries, stuff like that. Their caseload was 1,000 or 1,500. Immediately, by signing it, they agreed to take on basically all of these use of force cases. Even if there were no allegations of misconduct, we had to take on the case. And so that made it official, formal discipline immediately. And so the caseload increased overnight by 900%. That's the math. Just by signing the consent decree, which happened before I got there. That was just really stupid because they didn't plan for this. They didn't hire additional investigators. They didn't beef up the staff. And so the investigators went from having like 20 to 30 cases to having well over 100 cases each. And they were completely unprepared for this. So the person who preceded me, who was a good TC, by the way, I have no problem with him, Greg Kaczynski, he was good. But he was, the victim of this consent decree. So immediately, the investigation division had a massive backlog. So when I got there, there was a massive backlog of use of force and also PREA cases. It was in like 15,000 cases backlog. All right. It was a disaster. And again, you can't just get rid of them. Now it's my job to investigate all of them. The consent decree also gave timelines where you had to do it. You had to do more and you had to do it faster and you had to do it better because they also found that the investigators were doing biased investigations and they weren't doing it fairly and completely. So it was like, do it better, do it faster, do it with more, and we're not going to give you any additional staff to do it. So that's what I walked into. I came in there. So I started there in September of 2016 as just the trials person. So that wasn't my backlog. I got rid of the trials backlog. And then because I was successful in doing that, they encouraged me to apply for the investigation division deputy commissioner position, which I took in April of 2018. By then, we were like 3 years into the consent decree, and that backlog was insane. I went in there. I hate people.
What number you think? Like just a rough estimate.
So I would say it was about 15,000 use of force cases.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you were handling way more than just use of force cases.
Correct. We were also handling every other case.
Overall, what do you think your backlog?
20,000, probably 20,000 cases overall, because we had about.
What's your staff look like?
We had about 150 investigators.
It's nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. So do that math, right?
How many cases can 150 investigators actually handle? What would you say the numbers?
We did that math too. The ideal caseload is between 20 and 30. The ideal caseload is between.
So obviously the numbers are astronomical. You can't even keep up. It's not even possible. And they were dying. By the way,
one more question. Yeah. How long would you estimate a case? Like I know it varies, obviously, depending on the severity of the case. But average, like what do you think an average investigation time?
Yeah. If we had the right amount of staff and it was done the right way and we, had all of the tools that we needed, then an average of, a long-term investigation would probably take 6 months. I said 6 months. I was like, if we could get 6 months at the max, then. I
think that's short, but whatever.
It is short, by the way. It is.
Yeah.
But it's fair, right? Because I'm like, that would be a nice, like that to me is like, you did enough work. You took the time you needed, but you didn't hold somebody's career over their head for an unbelievable amount of time. Because
that's my point. That's why I think it's fair.
Too. Yeah,
because it holds up careers. With that being said, exactly. We see that with the NYPD. It's very reflective. The NYPD cases get dragged on me in particular, being the most complaint cop. That was my argument. Not getting due process. And in the majority of my cases, the statute of limitations was exceeded, and they used that crime exception to actually.
That's what they do.
Now, what I'm curious about is I offended a lot of. I'm not going to lie. I offended a lot of questions yesterday. I have a lot of friends that actually are actively in Department of Corrections, and I've had friends that worked at Department of Corrections. They now work in the NYPD, or they're retired at this point. Yeah. And so one of their complaints is that this backlog was actually obviously, and that's what's great about this platform is you're explaining, saying that you walked into this.
Yeah.
And now you have an opportunity to explain that. But a lot of the blame, I have to be honest, was upon yourself. So could you walk us through the process? What is the process of a use of force case to get to the point that we have such a backlog that we're not getting to process? Could you just walk us through that process of the use of force case till investigations and how it gets to your office?
Yeah. So a couple of things I want to address. So here's the thing. I hate when people are like, I walked into this mess and therefore it's not my fault. That's a Molina line, which was bullshit, by the way. I want to be super clear. I actually fixed it too. So I hate when people walk in and they're like, I'm going to make all these changes immediately. And my staff were like, what are you going to do right now? And I'm like, I'm not going to do shit right now. I'm going to figure out what the problems are. So I took about 3, 4, 5 months to analyze the whole structure of the place. And I actually redid, I see people saying they handled hundreds of cases. As a DA, I handled 350 cases, just so you guys know. So I get it. I restructured the whole place. And essentially I created a squad of people to like shear off that layer of bullshit cases in the first 20 days. And that was my solution to the consent decree, because the consent decree, and this also goes to your question, Eric, what did we have to do for those cases? The consent decree also forced us to take additional steps in every single case. Again, even if we knew out the gate that they were BS cases, we had to take all of these additional steps. Now, let me just give you one example, because I could talk about this for hours, but I'm not going to. But I'm going to give you one example, my best example of why it takes so long. Most use of force cases after the consent decree had to receive what's called an MEO 16. You guys have, what's that? What do you guys call it? When you interview, compelled interview of the staff, something
GO 15.
GO 15, exactly. So most cases had to go through an MEO 16, which meant that we had to interrogate witnesses and also the staff in question, right? Let me explain what that entails. If we have to interrogate the staff that we're investigating, they're obviously entitled to have their attorney present for all of those interrogations, right? I told you the number of cases we had, 15,000, right? I want you to take a guess. How many lawyers do you think the captain's union employed to represent their captain?
1, 2, 1 or 2.
One.
I also say 2, yeah.
One, okay? And the COs had like 5, okay? We're talking like 50,000 people. You
Only
tell me.
5 days, and yeah, that's how.
Yeah. You tell me how I and my staff are supposed to schedule these MEO 16s in a speedy fashion and get rid of thousands of cases when I have to schedule with one attorney for all of these interviews. Tell me. So it's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
That's the beauty of you get to explain this on a long platform, because a lot of people don't know this, and I saw it myself when it came to CCRB. I couldn't get my cases into the trial room. I had to wait approximately.
Yeah.
I was told 3 more years because they only had 2 attorneys assigned to CCRB.
Right. And that's why it's so ridiculous, because I was very against having to take on all of these cases into internal affairs. You have to understand, many of these cases were adjudicated originally at the command, a command discipline. And the monitor was very upset, and they were right to be upset. It's not that they were wrong to be upset. They were right that the managers in the jails were not handling those command disciplines the right way. They were also taking way too long, and they were biased and blah, blah, blah. But the problem is that their solution was, okay, we're giving all those cases to ID now, to IAB essentially. And that's not fair, because that overburdens us, but it also is not fair to the member, because now all their cases, which would have been adjudicated as a CD and off their record in a year, and it's informal discipline, is now formal discipline. Now if you come through ID, now you have to get what's called an MOC, a memorandum of complaint. You have to be exposed to oath. You have to be exposed to the trials division, whereas you didn't have to before. So now everything takes longer. Everything is formal. So what people don't know is I started a program where even when those cases had to come through me, I adjudicated cases that were low level like that as command disciplines. I created that entire program where you still see people getting deals to this day because of that program I started, where they could sign a plea agreement with trials, but have it be informal discipline instead of formal. I did that. And that was with negotiations with the monitor and everything, because I was basically trying to fix all of the things that the consent decree blew up. And it's very, very difficult to do.
So, Sarena, was that considered? That was considered a command discipline, even though that was at the trial room. It's almost like it never made it to the trial room. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. I did that. Yes, I did that, and that's something that that was the best. That was the least I could do at that point, because essentially that was me telling the monitor, listen, I will do these investigations and you'll be happy with them because they're under me instead of in the jail. So you know that they have integrity and you know that they were well executed and well investigated. But at the same time, you have to allow me to give fair dispositions. You have to allow me to say, this case, even though it was substantiated, was a low level, maybe procedural error rather than a substantive error. Let me give them, a low level discipline because that's what it deserves. And we were able to do that and we were able to maintain it. And now people come to me saying, Sarena, we got that disposition, but the job isn't giving us that CD treatment. They're not taking it off my record because God forbid anybody should do their jobs right. So now people call me to try to, tell HR, like, you got to take this off their record. This was, you have the best intentions, but sometimes it doesn't follow through. But those are the kinds of things that, like, I tried, you try to work within the rubric that you're given. You're told under a consent decree, you have to do X, Y, and Z. And yeah, you know what? We did catch more egregious conduct. We did catch more bad stuff. And that's great. But we also were overburdened with a bunch of stuff that we probably shouldn't have had to deal with and then blamed for the backlog. That's why I hate that my staff was blamed for the backlog, because it really wasn't their fault. You should have seen them. They were working to the bone. And we did get rid of the PREA backlog completely. Of course, now it's back now that I'm not there anymore. And we got rid of most of the use of force backlog. When I say that I told Tim Pearson I had unfinished business, it's because I took this job and I sectioned it off and I said, I'm going to get rid of the backlog of these cases first, these most egregious cases, the newer case, whatever. I broke it down and I was able to get rid of it. We actually got into compliance, partial compliance with our speediness and our backlog. And then I said, there's only one more backlog in the investigation division that I need to tackle. And that was like the longer term investigations. That was all I had left to do. And I already had the plan and it was going to take a year to fix the whole thing. And now I'm gone and the whole thing is backlogged. Front, middle, end, the whole thing has been reversed. It's all backlogged. And it kills me because I'm like, if you had just let me finish this, we could have had a clean slate. I could have onboarded the next person to take my place when I left, and we could have just kept this structure in place and made it fair for everybody. And they didn't allow that. And that's what pisses me off. I know I'm going to thrive. I'm going to get I have my firm. I'm going to get whatever I need to get for myself. But I know that me and my team put in years of effort to fix this. And now it's just dead. And that's what kills me, honestly. And my team and I still talk about it to this day. We still talk about how upset we are to look at the state of things now compared to what we were doing over there.
Yeah, that's absolutely ridiculous. So basically you walk into a completely incompetent environment, a shit show.
Yeah.
You clean it up, you bring some competence in there, you come with a plan. It's working, it's highly effective. You get the backlog all the way down.
Yeah.
And then, like, what I hear ultimately is, because I've been saying for a while that competence is not rewarded in the Adams administration. What they're looking for is compliance, ultimate compliance. And that's basically what that was. It was like, listen, I don't care what you have to do. I don't care. I'm putting the onus on you to do something completely illegal, something that has zero integrity. And I want you to just get rid of all these cases.
Yeah.
I want you to not look at them. I want you to do whatever you have to do. The same thing that happened in the NYPD. I know you're not familiar with it, but we had filed, we had some issues with internal affairs when we came out on the line and started speaking against the podcast. And one of the people that we had an issue with was the chief of internal affairs, who, what his job was to basically, we want all guys to have a clean record, so we just don't report corruption. So when allegations are made, we just pretend like they're not made. And that was basically what was happening. And that's basically what they asked you to do. And I think that's your story, really. I think, your story is exactly what happened throughout every other agency. And it's absolutely disgusting. And so now we're looking at Rikers, and it's a complete shit show. What are your thoughts on Rikers? What are your thoughts on closing Rikers, on these borough-based?
Yeah.
Like, do you see any effectiveness in anything that Eric Adams is doing?
I'm going to answer that. But first, I want to say you're totally right about asking me to do exactly that, because the guy that he hired to take my place did exactly that. And then he had to be pushed out because the monitor found out he was just not taking any cases. So that's exactly what happened. And I was honestly, I told you people criminal. This was going to happen. Yeah.
Criminal.
Yeah. What are my thoughts on Rikers? That's a really good question. To be honest with you, I don't think Rikers can close. I think it's necessary, but I also see value in having added borough-based jails for a couple of reasons. First of all, that's not totally a novel concept. As you guys know, there are jails in the boroughs. I mean, some of them are closed now, but there are jails in the boroughs. This is not like a novel concept already. The reason I think it's helpful for the system in general, for everybody, is a lot of stuff happens in transporting people to their court dates. When I say a lot of stuff, it takes a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of staff to move people who are on Rikers to the courts every single day to have their court dates. And that is a lot of times when we see uses of force. And whether that's a use of force that's a good use of force or a bad use of force, it exposes people to injury and it exposes everybody to delay. And I know, being in the courtroom, that we have delays a lot when people aren't getting to court on time because the buses are late or because somebody didn't want to get on the bus or get off the bus. So I see value in having borough-based jails for just logistic purposes of having people closer to the courts. I mean, as you guys know, maybe not everybody knows this, but you and probably most of your listeners do know this. Rikers is a pretrial detention facility. This is not where people are just going and staying and living for their, through their 10, 15-year sentence. These are people who are only on Rikers because they have court dates. That's it. So the purpose of Rikers is to ensure that people get to court. That is it. That's why bail is set, because we don't think people are going to come to court. So if they're there to get to court, we should have them close to court. We should have them close to their courthouse. So I do agree that there should be some borough-based jails. And I think, using that strategically, we will decrease delays in courts and will decrease uses of force between staff and detainees, and also decrease the potential for, other fights between detainees, potential contraband. The more you have to move people around, the harder the job is for DOC staff. So I like the idea of borough-based jails. Also, let's be real, it allows people to have easier visits from their family members, if they are jailed in the borough where they live rather than on some, island. But I also do think that, in general, if we're going to have a population of 6,000 people, it's going to be difficult to fit everybody in the borough-based jails. And I think having Rikers as kind of one of the jails is probably still an important thing. But you do need to improve the infrastructure of Rikers while we have it. That's for sure.
I mean, I think that we see mismanagement for years. But with this administration, It's just been so egregious. It's so inept and so inadequate. And I feel, based on your story, which I think is so forthcoming, and you appear to be extremely genuine to me, right? Because you didn't have to come on this podcast and give your explanation of that, hey, I've dealt with these cases, and you've advocated for your team, which shows your character. And you stood on moral principle. To me, it seems like you walked into this situation and you had a decision. Do I stand on moral principle and actually investigate these cases? Because it is the benefit of members to figure out what's going on with this backlog, right? You determine they don't have enough manpower when it comes to attorneys. These cases are being dragged on. And you were boxed into that position, stand on moral principle, or do I just comply? And that's why I agree with John. This administration is about compliance. We don't care about the rule of law or policy.
Yeah, you see that across all of the agencies. You're right. It's not just DOC. My situation is emblematic of what happened to a lot of people. But, honestly, it's obvious that he just wanted a yes man. And so does Adams. Everybody that he put in there just wanted yes men. Just do it. Just do what I say. And I'm like, listen, I'm not giving up my law license to appease you, to give you a talking point so that in 100 days, you could have a little press conference and pat yourself on the back that I got rid of 2,000 cases. Exactly, I'm not giving up my law license for your ass. Sorry.
That's exactly what it is. I hear your story, and that's what I realized. That's exactly what it is. Listen, give me this in 100 days. I don't care about policy. Let's get rid of it. And the bottom line is, to me, what it sounds like, hey, you're betting for the members so that someone with cancer is actually getting their sick time while someone else is abusing it who should be at work.
Yeah.
And
listen, the people who showed up to work during COVID are heroes, and they got screwed by their colleagues who were faking sick.
You just woke John up. John's like, okay,
I know. Let's do it. Let's go, John.
I worked every day, and then I got it.
I said the C word.
I was there. I got to be honest. I was out there working. I wasn't wearing my mask. That wasn't my, cop watch was all over me. Said some pretty nasty things. We actually had someone die in PSA 7, and they said that we're killing a fellow cop. So listen, let's talk about overtime. That's always been a huge issue with Department of Corrections. The overtime is astronomical. And even before this administration with the predecessors, but even now, with the shit show we see going on with Department of Corrections, can this ever be managed? I mean, can it get to a point that's actually manageable? Because it's out of control. And, from what I know, I speak to some correctional officers. It really kills morale. Some of them are locked down there for 2 days where they can't even get home to their kids.
Yeah.
They have no access to a cell phone. What's that?
Yeah. We had people doing triple tours, especially during COVID. And it's horrible. Listen, in my opinion, having an overtime situation that we have is just a reflection of mismanagement. You need to be able to deploy people in the right places during the right tours, hire the right amount of officers. Like, how is it possible that we're still talking about what is the right number of officers needed for Rikers Island? This is still kind of an unanswered question. We've had people answer this question in so many different ways, and nobody's been able to nail that number correctly. You need to figure out, it's just a puzzle. And if you have smart people figuring out that puzzle, you're going to figure it out. How many people do you need for the amount of people, right? For the population of detainees? What are the tours? How many tours are there? Are you working, 4 on, 5 on, whatever it is, and you're working 12-hour shifts? How many people do you need? It's a very, it's not, I'm not going to say it's simple, but it's not fixable. And so the overtime, to me, that problem is a management problem. Totally a management problem. Put the right people and the right number of people where they need to be, and you won't have that problem. And you're right, it kills morale because you have people literally getting stuck on Rikers Island for God knows how long, and they can't get home to their family. It's terrible.
No, yeah. I gotta say, the way that you put borough-based jails, I totally, and a lot of people in the chat are saying it. I totally support what you're saying. It makes perfect sense.
Thank you.
My concern with it, though, is the level of competence in the people that are putting this plan together. So we're spending billions and billions of dollars to do this. We're not actually going to wind up saving anything. And it's going to house less people than currently the population of Rikers.
Yep. And
the same people are in charge. Like you just highlighted the case for pure, utter incompetence and inept leadership. Again, like you just said that. How long has Rikers Island been in existence for? And we don't know the guard to prisoner ratio. We don't know. Like we have no one's took time to figure this out.
Yeah.
How do we have this backlog of cases that's been sitting since 2015? That was it worked for a while. You had a system that worked. It came down, and now it's all back to right where it was. And we're just letting it sit. And not only do we let it sit, we give Louis Molina, who is in charge of doing this and failed miserably, we appoint him to be in charge of every New York City agency as the head.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And it's like those things that people don't understand. Like when I look back at the borough-based jails, I'm not actually saying the idea. I'm like, I just don't think that these people have the wherewithal to like really put this together. And I don't think these are the people in place in city government currently that should do this, because I just see complete failure. And again, I always say it. I'm like, if we can't manage 4 walls, people that you take their rights away from them, they have like almost zero constitutional right in there in 4 walls. You can't keep them from harming themselves, from harming others, from being harmed, from committing suicide, from getting access to drugs, from using drugs. And I'm like, if we can't do that there, how the hell do we expect you to do it out here?
In a contained environment, right? It's like, this is your home court advantage, and you can't get it done.
And it's completely Orwellian, right? It's a completely Orwellian environment. And how the hell do we expect you to do it out here?
That's so true. And I mean, there's just so many unknowns when you're on the street. There's so many more, possible. It's like choose your own adventure, right? It's like there's so many more possible routes that things could take when you're a beat cop, for example, and you're just on the street and you're like, it's so different. And yeah, we can't even get Rikers right in a contained environment. And when you say you put a Molina in charge of all the agencies, it's just sickening because not one policy. I mean, he rode the coattails of everybody who did good work that he ended up firing and demoting. And then when all of that goodwill ran out, because what happens, right? You change administrations and things like just peter out. When all of that petered out, he was left holding a bag of shit. He was like, I actually don't know what I'm doing. So we're just going to kill more people on Rikers Island than ever before.
That's the theme of this administration. We have people in place that have no idea what they're doing. That's why this all comes down to it's grossly incompetent, this entire administration, because who will point to them? Eric Adams. Someone else is incompetent. And we see a failure on leadership. That's why I say it all the time. If we can talk about anything. We can talk about basket weaving. The bottom line is if you have a failure in leadership, that organization is going to crumble. If your leadership is in place, it's going to thrive. And I mean, here we're talking about variables in the street and in a contained environment, just as Rikers Island. I mean, what does that do for morale? That we can't even figure out how many guards we need, in ratio to inmates. I was a correctional officer, but I tell you right now, my heart goes out to those correctional officers. They work hard. I mean, it's completely unmanned. It's mismanaged. I don't even know how these guys stay there in this environment. It's totally mismanaged. I obviously the money must be good because of the overtime, but other than that, what's the incentive? What's the incentive to stay in that organization where it's completely mismatched?
I don't know. The money is very good, but I was the person who had access to every single camera on that island 24/7. And the things that I have seen, of course it was my job to focus. People are like, well, what about the detainees? How come you don't do anything about them? And I'm like, I literally don't have that job. I did. I was a DA. And when I was a DA, I prosecuted the crap out of criminals. But like now this is my job. So this is what I have to focus on. And unfortunately, like they hired a smart one to do it. So I'm going to do it well. Like that's just what it is. But watching those cameras, like just, in general, these officers are facing an extraordinarily difficult job. And the conditions, I mean, we talk about Rikers, you guys are on the street, which gives you a lot more variables and it's very dangerous, but at least, you're in an open air. I mean, just the smell, it's depressing to work there. Like imagine that's your workplace. Imagine you suit up and you go to work every day and it smells bad and you got to stand on your feet all day and people splashing you with unknown substances. They're threatening you. I mean, it's a very dangerous job. And are we giving people the tools to do it? They ended up giving the younger detainees, like the 16 and 17-year-olds, to ACS. You guys know about this? They have the Horizon project. So like they took the young kids out from under DOC and they gave them to ACS to manage. It's basically an ACS managed jail. And I think like they didn't even give them OC spray. Like they took those tools, and that was such a huge thing because the officers are like, on Rikers, that's our only like weapon. That's our only tool to protect ourselves against certain acts of aggression. And yeah, sometimes they overuse the OC. I'm not going to lie, right? But like on the other hand, they felt a little safer having it with them. And the young kids, the young kids are young and we have to treat them, really well because they are susceptible. They don't have, their brain functioning hasn't finished until they're 24 years old. They're more susceptible to trauma. We have to appreciate all of that. But we also have to appreciate that because of that, kind of lack of discipline maybe, and because they're younger, they're also sometimes more violent and they don't care necessarily as much as older people do about consequences, and they're in good shape, they're young. And so they could be very dangerous to officers as well. And we have to give people those tools. And so you have to look at the managers that are making these decisions and wonder, do they really understand and appreciate the dangers of being in law enforcement? Because some of the decisions that are being made, yes, we have to appreciate that lawsuit. We have to appreciate that there are rogue cops, there are rogue correction officers, there are rogue people out there. And maybe if it wasn't cameraed up, more bad things would have happened. Yes. we have to appreciate that. But we also have to treat people like adults on the job and give them the ability to defend themselves and the ability to do their job and show up in a safe environment. So yeah, my heart goes out to everybody there too, because it's a real tough job.
100%.
Absolutely. Listen, Sarena, I'm so appreciate your forthcoming. You got a great personality.
Thank you.
Let's have a little fun. Tell us about Sarena. Tell us about, now you have your own law firm. Are you eventually looking to go back into public service? What's the future hold for Sarena?
Oh my God, Eric, it's a really good question. I was always a public servant. That was my life. I served New York City my entire life. I love New York City. My family is from New York City. Like, they immigrated here a million years ago. This is my world. And it was actually a very tough blow to me to get fired, not because of the ego, which was definitely there too, but because I love this city. And I knew that when that happened, the administration was so corrupt. I had offers to go to other places to work in the city, DA's offices, et cetera, at that time. And I was like, I can't work for this administration. And that killed me because I was always a public servant. And I don't want to ever say I wouldn't go back into public service, because I feel like that's who I am. That's in me. I love fighting for New York City, New Yorkers. That's my thing. I also really enjoyed fixing the inefficiencies of the system. As you see, I get really excited when you ask me about, borough-based jails or what to do to fix, certain agencies, because I know that when I walk into a shit show, when I walk into a mismanaged, inefficient place, I can see what I need to do to fix it. And I'm not politically intertwined with anybody. So I don't really care what people say. I'm not influenced by anybody except justice and fairness. So for me, yes, I have my law firm. I love my law firm. I love my clients. When they hire me, it becomes very personal to me. I fight and I advocate and I win. I'm very aggressive for my clients. But I love New York City. Like, I always considered New York City my client. So I do think that maybe public service is, something that I would step back into. I feel I could represent more people more efficiently that way, if you think about it. When I was a DA, I represented the people of the state of New York. I didn't just have people paying me individually to help them. When I was at DOC, I felt like I represented both the detainees and the staff, because I advocated as much as I could for both. Even though I got, a bad rap for it, I really do think that was because other people were speaking for me. I think I used to meet with officers that I was disciplining sometimes, and I would sit down with them, and a lot of times they would, tell me their side of the story. And I'd be like, you know what? This case is not what I thought it was. I'm going to change my position on the case. And I give everybody a fair shake. So, for me, I think I was built for public service. So I would never turn that down. It's just that Mayor Adams has to not be in charge, in my opinion, for me to go back.
And listen, I love it. And I know how the unions, I don't know if you ever heard our intro, but you should listen to it. It's a union meeting. And, I know how the unions can twist utilizing low information and hook points on people and really spreading misinformation about people and who you are and what you do. And I applaud you, by the way, for going after them and not worrying about that, because that's the thing. Integrity is hard, right? Like, when you have integrity, it's a very hard thing. Sometimes it's going to cost you your career.
And that is what did me in.
And that happened to all three of us. It's like, well, no, I didn't do anything wrong. I'm not gonna bend the knee. I'm not gonna lower my integrity. And just I know you've been on here all day. I don't want to keep you all day, but I just have a couple more questions for you.
Please.
One, I just want to say before I forget, corrections officers, best cops I ever supervised. They were like traumatized, literally. Yeah. They would like trauma. They would tell me, Sarge or Lieutenant, I will do whatever you tell me to do, and I'm happy to do it. I'm just happy I'm not on Rikers Island or whatever prison they came from, whether it was state or city. Those guys, I'm the guys and girls were like, they were literally the best cops I ever worked with because,
Yeah.
but I felt bad for them because they were like kind of traumatized and they were so institutionalized that
Yep.
they didn't care. They're like, you could send me to do anything. It doesn't matter. Don't even explain it to me. And I'm like, no, I just got to tell you like what you need to know. Like,
Yeah.
and
They were like, do you need anything else, please?
yeah. They're like, I'll do any. I was like, okay, no problem. So, but I don't know if you could speak on this at all. I don't know if you have anybody retained, but just you're curious. I full disclosure, I watched some of the video about the Robert Brooks incident. I thought that it was terrible.
Yeah,
I don't know that if you could speak on that.
I can.
But just if you could just give like your professional take on that.
Oh my God, that's such a good question. Yeah, that was really, really bad. Okay, so my take on it. First of all, I want to say in the 6 years that I worked on Rikers Island investigating those exact type of misconduct, I've never seen anything like that in my life. All right. So, I wanted to be very clear to your listeners that is not what I was seeing on Rikers Island. And Rikers gets a really bad rap, and some of it's deserved, but, that was not happening. Maybe that was happening before the consent decree, because I will give credit to the consent decree in that they made sure that the place was cameraed up everywhere. And so we were able to see more things. My professional opinion there is, honestly, though, some of those guys should be facing murder charges. That's how bad it was. I could not believe what I saw. It was egregious. Listen, officers need to use force sometimes on people, but what I saw was somebody who was basically dying at the hands of these officers, and they kept going. I don't know, we always say we need to see what happened before the body-worn cameras. We want all the context. I normally agree with that, but from what I saw enough of the before and the during to know that what I saw was a crime, most likely murder on most of their parts. And you guys know, when you have those acting in concert charges, everybody is liable to be charged with murder, even the ones who didn't, do all of the most egregious things to that man. But he was completely helpless. You cannot justify that level of force against somebody like that. To keep going, I mean, you're seeing like the kick to his groin. You're seeing like the punches to the face, the choking, he was like a rag doll at some point, and they're slamming him around. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. Even in the cases that I prosecuted, the murder cases that I prosecuted, or even, was exposed to as a DA that I didn't personally prosecute. This is one of the most egregious things that I've seen. And it doesn't matter, who you are. It doesn't matter if you have that shield. It doesn't matter that he was, he had been convicted of something pretty egregious too. None of that matters, because you don't decide his fate. It is your job to keep him alive and to keep him, to give him his constitutional rights. And you killed him. Those guys killed that man. So that's my professional opinion. That was the worst thing that I have seen.
I mean, I agree with you. Without all the entire context, right? Just based on what we've seen so far.
Yeah.
I think I've never seen anything like it. We all can agree on that. It's one of those cases like, wow, you almost don't even want to see it again.
Yeah.
But with that being said, I agree with John. Some of my cops that I had that came over from corrections, they were part of my special operations unit. They were outstanding. I mean, they were the most soft-spoken cops that I had. Like, anytime we always knew if we needed to calm someone down, I looked to my correctional officer. Like, I never get to have one of these guys working for me. He was about 6'3", big guy, great shape. And he came and he worked in corrections. Same thing as John. Like, he was just so happy to not be locked in his jail all day. But when it came time to calm these guys down,
yeah,
we had a perpetrator, a subject. That was the guy. I always knew he was soft spoken. That was because that was his wheelhouse. I mean, when you're in that environment, working in the jails, and you don't have many tools, and you're pretty much, like you said, your only tool maybe is a baton or that spray. And again, there's restrictive force guidelines. The conversation becomes a powerful dialogue. It becomes a sword for the correctional officers. So, with that being said, I appreciate that you advocate for them. I appreciate what I heard from you is you advocating for your team, and that's what I want to hear from someone. Is that not making it about you, right? Make it about your team. So, what is most of your team doing now?
It's a good question. Some of them are still there, and they're just trying to fix the things that were broken. Some of them have moved on to other agencies. A lot of them stayed in that role as investigators, but for other places. A lot of them went into private work because they were kind of demoralized when all is said and done, because they saw that the progress was being made, and then, it just stalled. Some of them held on for a little bit in the hopes that things would get better. And then when they didn't, they left for private practice. They kind of scattered. They scattered around. Some of them are doing, their own thing with their own investigative team. They did anything that they could, essentially, to maintain kind of their integrity. A lot of them left because of that. They didn't want to be in a system that was forcing them to do things that just wrong, plain wrong. And I really appreciated the support that they gave me. It's interesting. After everything that happened to me, they came out, swinging. They came out supportive. And so did, of course, the DAs that I worked with. They were in shock because they worked with me, for 10 years when I was a DA. And they were like, we know what happened. Like, we know you stood up for the right thing. And we know that you got screwed. And so they were furious that my former colleagues at the DA's office, they were like, we can't say anything publicly, but we're furious. We love you. You know what I mean? But my team was the best team. The thing that I said, if you read one of the very first articles, remember if it was in the Daily News or the City or Hellgate, it was one of those three. I said one of my biggest regrets, and one of the things that I thought was the worst that had happened to me, is that they walked me out because I wasn't able to address my team. I was very, very hands-on with my team. We had a lot of meetings. I know a lot of DC's deputy commissioners, they punch in, they punch out. That's it. I was very committed to my team. We had lots of discussions, lots of talks. How do I make things better? How do we fix this? I want your input. I knew that there was no way I could have succeeded without them. And my managers, I loved my managers. My managers were so supportive of me. And I think you guys know that when you have a team like that at the top, the people who work for that team want to succeed. They want you to succeed. They want to be like, I work for Sarena. Like, I work with her. And they're proud of me, and they are proud of themselves. I tried to promote a lot of people. I created new positions for people who deserved it. And I gave them promotions because they deserved it. And I gave them tasks because I knew that they would be the ones to help fix the place alongside me. And that's what we did. And so the worst thing for me was when I was walked out, because I wasn't able to go back to my team to say, thank you for everything you did. None of this is your fault. Stay strong, work hard. You're going to be able to live through this, whereas these idiots at the top are not. So if you just keep going, you're going to be okay. And I just didn't have that opportunity. And that was the worst. We had some hugs in the parking lot. The people who came by, they came out, they did their thing to say goodbye to me. But I really would have loved to have officially addressed them, because I had a lot of staff. I had like 300 people under me between the different bureaus that I had. And so that sucked. But my team, that's who should be publicized. And that's why when I get the attention and I'm in the media and all of that, I try very hard to make sure that they know that they're appreciated, because they worked so hard and so diligently under very difficult demands. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Sarena, I know I want to keep you all morning. I know I appreciate you spending.
I'll be back. I'll be back.
No, you're good. You're always welcome to come on here. Could you just give us your final thoughts, and like, if you could, just what you see for the future of New York City, and what you think the plan should be going forward in New York to right the ship?
Oh my God. First of all, listen, you have to get rid of the criminal enterprise that is currently running New York City. It's essentially a RICO case waiting to happen, in my opinion. I think Mayor Adams is literally running a criminal enterprise. He staffed it with his friends. It was completely nepotistic. people who were incompetent, people who were in it for the wrong reasons. We just need new leadership. We need somebody who's going to take the helm, who's going to right that ship. And I think since we're really talking about criminal justice here, so let's focus on that. I think that there are a lot of opportunities to fix a lot of things in the criminal justice system. When I say that, I mean, because I have worked in a lot of forums at this point. I've worked as a DA. I've worked now as a defense attorney. I've worked at DOC. I've represented officers. So I've seen a whole spectrum of things, and I've interacted a lot with judges throughout my career too. And so there is this. It's a conveyor belt, and this is how I felt at DOC. Being in charge of internal affairs and then also in charge of prosecuting those cases, that's a conveyor belt. You have, the case, the incident that happens, you have the investigation that happens after the incident, then you have the prosecution of that investigation after that. That is emblematic of how our criminal justice system is. You have people committing crimes, you have the police investigating it, you have the DAs prosecuting it, and the judges who oversee that. That should not be ignored. The fact that we are on a conveyor belt should not be ignored. It should not be siloed. So whatever happens with our mayor, whatever happens in the criminal justice system, my firm opinion is that all of those people, the top people, the DAs, defense attorneys, even DOC, judges, everybody has to work together to make things fairer and more efficient. Fair for the staff, fair for the inmates, fair for everybody. And the only way you can do that is if you have the right structure to integrate all of that together. And I think that that's what's missing. So when you ask me what can we do to make New York City run better? And it's more than just criminal justice, right? It's like our subways, it's, congestion pricing. It's so much more than just that, but just the focus of criminal justice, it needs to be more cohesive. And there is a way to do it. I'm not just speaking in platitudes. If you have somebody who can analyze it the right way and strategize it, and you have an actual cohesive team instead of people just being politically, marred against each other, there's a way to actually do this so that everybody benefits. And that's really what I'd love to see in the future. I really would, but you have to have the right people at the helm.
I wonder, John, if we're having any issues with sound. We got a bunch of comments.
This is perfectly clear, unless we have some drones flying over that's blocking the stream. I mean, so the recording of this will be clear. I see you guys in the chat saying the recording of this is perfect. The Sarena sounds perfect over here.
Same here. I don't hear any issues.
If you guys had any problem, you want to go back, you want to hear that sound bite, we'll probably make a clip of it anyway, and it's completely clear here. So don't worry, we're all good here. It's just, maybe there's some running interference on Serena's last statement. I wonder why.
Listen, I wonder why.
Serena, listen,
I got to sweep the place for bugs.
Serena, I can tell you right now, I mean, I'm sure you're aware, John and I sometimes do podcasts for over 4 hours, and we could go all day. We've had sound issues. We've been taken down, during the course. It's all right. When you tell the truth, I mean, there's a lot of people that come after you. So I give you a lot of credit.
True.
I want to thank you so much for being so forthcoming, getting to know
Thank you guys.
But definitely, listen, you're invited here anytime. Listen,
thank you.
For our friends and listeners out there, like, share, and subscribe. Serena, we hope you subscribe also if you're not subscribed yet.
I'm all ready.
stay for the ride. I just want to ask you this one thing because now and before, we'll let you go. We'll let you enjoy your day, of course. But for me, I asked myself, would I have made any decisions differently? Would I have done anything different and I'd still be employed by the NYPD and not have to retire? And the answer is no. I'm happy on this path that I'm in right now. It's actually opened a lot of new doors, and I think this is where I belong. John, I know he says the same thing, but what about you? I mean, here you're in a position, you love public service. Do you think if you had to go back in time, would you have done anything different, or you would have stuck with your same decisions and now you're in this point where you may have an opportunity to return back to public service or not? But would you stand by your moral principles and do it again?
I would do it all again. If you asked me the day after I got fired this question, I might have been like, Serena, you're an idiot. What did you do? But no, because the bottom line is I have to then think through what would have happened if I did something different. If I had done something different, it would have meant that I compromised my morals. And it also would have meant that I saved my job, but for what? Then I would have had to work for that asshole. I don't know, And so, and by the way, in all seriousness, I'm afraid of change. That's just, you ask my husband, he would say, Sarena, you're so afraid of change. I am. I like things, I like to do things like with a lot of foresight, a lot of forethought, a lot of strategic planning. And so for me, getting fired was a big blow because I'm like, I didn't plan for this. And so I appreciate that it forced me to change immediately, to adapt. And it also forced me into a situation where now I've had a different perspective. I've been allowed to have my own firm. I've had this ability to do work on the other side. And I've allowed myself to kind of open myself up to so many different projects that I do. I advocate for a lot of different people, a lot of different organizations have hired me and used me for my background, for my expertise. And I really appreciate that well-roundedness. And so if I re-enter public service, I will re-enter it with that perspective. And I never would have gotten the ability to have that perspective if I hadn't gotten fired. So aside from the moral stance that I would never compromise my morals, and aside from the fact that now I'm happy I didn't work for the Adams administration, I got to walk out of there on day one, with, completely unscathed without having to do anything on their behest. I also got the privilege of having all of these experiences. And I never would have met you guys if I didn't get fired. So
I got to read this out. Mikey G, metal detector in Long Island, says, yeah, if you'd be working this administration, you might be walking out in handcuffs. So you made the right decision.
That's right. That's right. So God is good.
I literally say that. I was telling somebody that the other day. I was like, I really think God protected me. I swear, because I would have never went along with the things that I heard that people had to go along with. And I was in a position, I would have had to deal directly with these low integrity individuals. I wouldn't have went along with it. So they would have. I was out one way or the other.
Yeah.
I think it honestly, I think God protected me. Honestly, I do. Sarena, I have all the links. So this is going to go out on basically everywhere. Apple, Spotify, cool. It's on YouTube, it's on Rumble. But could you just walk us through real quick your Instagram, social media handles, and just tell us a little bit about your firm and who might want to contact your firm? Especially related to if you're in the NYPD and you're having some issues, like what type of people, what type of cases are you handling?
Yeah, my pleasure. So so my firm is, you could find me at www.townsendlawnyc.com. My social medias, I'm all over the place. I'm on Instagram at Sarena T. Make sure you spell Sarena right. It's Sarena. Thanks, Mom. My whole life I've had to fix that, but SarenaTee is my Instagram handle. I'm on Twitter, or X, I guess. It's just Townsend Sarena, and actually blew up on TikTok recently. And you can find me, I think I'm just Sarena Townsend on TikTok. So you can find me there. I do a lot of stuff. I do criminal defense, but for your listeners who are officers, if you want my help, and again, this is, I guess, attorney advertising. So I think I have to say that all of my past successes are not guaranteed in the future, but I've been pretty damn successful. If you are facing discipline on the job, that's usually what officers call me to help them with. I help them fight those charges, those disciplinary charges, especially those who are facing termination. Those are obviously the most serious cases, but any case that you find yourselves facing disciplinary wise, I'm happy to defend you. And I'd also accompany you to your GO15, like I do the MEO16s for the correction officers. So if you're an officer, that's typically, I also do have a lot of officers who contact me for employment lawsuits. And I work with somebody who's very well versed in employment law. So I wouldn't turn those away either. I see Joe Mango. Sarena, yes, thank you. The right spelling. I appreciate that. And it doesn't bother me that people spell it S-E, but it's just been the bane of my existence my whole life. But those are the people who could contact me. I also work with law firms who need my expertise on best practices for jail settings, things like that. And I also teach. I've been teaching. I taught at Suffolk County Police Academy. I've taught other jails across the country, including in Texas and Virginia. So I'm open for business in a lot of different ways, and I'm happy to help anybody. If I can't help you, I know the person who can. I can find you the best attorney to represent you if it's not me. So essentially just find me anywhere. You just Google me and I'm around as long as you spell my name right.
All right, awesome.
Thank
Listen,
you, John.
we appreciate you spending time with us this morning.
Eric
We'd
and
love to
John, you
have
guys are
back.
so cool. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely reach
Thank
out.
you,
We'll
thank
be
you.
in touch. We'll be in touch. So,
Yeah.
we'll let you go. Have a great day. And, I think it was good. You got a little bit of hate on here, but a lot more love. A lot of people.
I started to see the tides turn.
Yeah. I'm
There
seeing
we
the
go.
tides.
You see?
People are saying run for
convincing a jury.
mayor. You should work with the union. So, it was a great interview. I knew it was going to be. I was like, this will be fireworks. I know some people aren't going to like it. So we'll make sure we get a lot of clips of it out.
That's great. I fully support it.
Well, Sarena, you got one case right here. We're going to talk. I want to talk about my promotion. So we're definitely going to talk.
There we go. All right, let's do it. Guys, it was such a pleasure. It really was so nice to actually have a face-to-face with you. I really appreciate your time. It was cool.
Thank you, Sarena. You're welcome anytime. It's been a pleasure, and I wish you well. Outstanding.
Thank you so much. Thank you, guys.
Likewise.
Take care.
Later. All right, that was awesome, man. That was a great experience. I knew she had a lot to say, I'll be honest, the criminal enterprise thing, I was like, whoa, because that's, we've been saying it for
We
so
use that word a
long.
lot. Yeah.
And more and more I hear people like saying it, and I'm like, all right, so it's not just us. It's not just us that are saying that, right? She's totally separate from the NYPD. She's totally separate from our experience. I mean, not totally separate. I mean, there are a lot of similarities here, but we're in different agencies. We know different people. We have different perspectives. We look at this administration from different levels. She was a deputy commissioner. We were lieutenants. So, we're like middle management. She's upper echelon. And you're seeing it all over, and you keep hearing the same thing: criminal enterprise. And I mean, and anyone not saying it at this point, I'm like, I don't believe it. Sherry says, put the link up. Links in the story. If you go in on YouTube, all of her social media handles, her law firm, all that stuff is on YouTube, Rumble. The only one it doesn't come up on is X, I believe. That's the only stuff. But I removed all of our advertising stuff. I just put her stuff in there. So you should you should definitely get on there. You should definitely follow her. She's definitely interested in follow. I think I'm hearing TikTok's going to be banned, but I'm telling her, I don't know who sent me her TikTok, but I started just watching all her videos. I was like, wow. And then she does a lot of media hits too. She's on like whatever channel that is, the legal channel. She gives a lot of she analyzes court cases, things like that too. So she works in media a little bit too.
Listen, I think she interviewed really well. And I think what's great, and this is what I've been trying to convene to people, is that when I say opposition meets opportunity, is that she received an extreme amount of opposition. My phone was blowing up. And people like, honestly, John, they basically called us assholes, both of us. And that's what people tell me for having her on. Like, why would you have her on? Look what she did. I said, you know what? And here's the problem. And I can't speak for all Department of Corrections, but I can speak for cops. The overwhelming majority of cops get their information by third person, and they get what they heard. All the time you hear, right? Most of the information that flows through the NYPD, it's probably the same thing for corrections, is rumors. Oh, I heard this, I heard that. And I always say, did you read it for yourself? Did you ask for yourself? So here's an opportunity where we actually had an interview and a great roundtable conversation with Sarena. And when you hear from her standpoint, it makes sense. Like, okay, well, there may be some abuse with sick time here. Let's find out, because there's people that have cancer that they're being treated the same way as they're abusing it, and they need to be out for 2 years. Maybe they're getting radiation, they're getting chemo treatment, and they need this unlimited sick time, while other people are abusing it because they want to paint their apartment. So I when you hear from that standpoint, and then when you hear what she said, where she was innovative, and she said, okay, we have discipline here. It's coming to my office, but I'm willing to not get back to the command level. It's you're getting a form of discipline, but now it's not formal. It's not formal charges, and so really that gets eradicated from your record. So if you hear some of the things she did, right, and she stood on moral principle, right? She couldn't say I could just get rid of this, right? But she had to look into it, and by looking into it, she was able to identify these issues with this backlog. And what she said was, excuse me, was actually compassionate, where she wanted these cases to be shut and done with after 6 months so people could get promoted. They're not held up with their careers. And that's the biggest problem with the NYPD. These cases drag on. It happened with me, and that's why I was told, hey, you can wait 3 more years to actually take these cases to trial. By the time they would be almost a decade old. And my career, I would be just living in the past. So that's why I knew I had to retire. And that's what we need, people like this that are willing to have conversations. No matter what, if she still faces opposition, she's willing to stand here and answer these questions. That's a lot more than I can say than the mismanagement in this criminal enterprise. And listen, I'll tell you right now, full disclosure, we say that all the time. I say that personally, criminal enterprise. She didn't get that from us because we're seeing it. Because the same leadership is in charge of the NYPD. It's in charge of the Department of Corrections. It's destroyed all these agencies in this entire city. So I also want to thank you so much, our friends and listeners. You know, there's money that was distributed, coffee and donuts in the super chat, and we didn't read them all out. We didn't want to interrupt our interviewee, and I think that's really the factor. That's our interviewing style. We want to let them speak, give them the opportunity. It's their time. Let's hear this story. We don't want to have a Hannity interaction where we're going to interrupt them. So going forward, that's what you should expect from interviews with John, myself, and anyone that's on the show. Listen, we even had Cop Watch on, and everybody knows Cop Watch stalked my career. I will let him speak and show him respect. Remember, you don't have to respect someone, but you should always show them respect.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And like I said, I think, I said it before she even came on here. I said, that I think that what you're going to see is that we're right in line, and there's a lot of people on here saying she didn't fix the backlog. She created the backlog. Listen, I know a lot of guys in the union were reaching out. So you guys are welcome to come on the podcast and have the discussion. We'll give you the platform. But, I never liked the, it's something to me about being out here with your name and your photo and standing behind your words. And then there's something else about, and I'm not knocking the people that do it. I understand some of you are protecting your identity, but understand when you're knocking someone from behind a fake name and a fake photo, I just take it with a grain of salt. I'm just not going to put too much emphasis on it because it's hard to be out here, dude. When Eric was like, "Listen, I want to do," I was like, "Dude, I'm telling you, like, like as much as people love you now, that you're gonna get a lot of stuff." And he's like, "I don't care, dude. I'm not afraid of it. I want to be out here. I'm gonna stand behind my words." I was like, "Okay," and I said, "Let's do it," and it's true, it takes balls to come out, speak, use your name, tell what you're telling, give your opinions. It's not a narcissistic approach either, because like I never wanted to be in media. Eric never wanted to be in media. Doesn't sound like Sarena really ever wanted to be in media. We just wanted to do our jobs. We just wanted to do what we were told, and I feel the same way. Like I still feel obligated. I mean, I think we're still kind of public servants right now. We're just not on city payroll. That's the only difference. Yeah, no, I appreciate so I appreciate all you guys. And I do. I think, we got to keep, when we have guests on, we're going to keep, we're going to keep it civil and the conversation open and the dialogue flowing. Regardless, opposition, no opposition, it doesn't matter. It's a conversation. We're sitting down with people. Shout out to Upstate Detective 999. Good morning, brothers. Good morning to you. And I think, and not to say none of yous weren't. I think everybody was professional on here, except for you guys that were hitting on her. But that's some of the guys in the chats had a little redhead fetish. I was laughing. Yeah. And listen, by the way, we're not telling you to stop with the coffee and donuts. While it's going on, if you want coffee and donuts going through, we appreciate it. So I don't want to tell you to stop. Yeah. But Chief Patrick Jordan, host of Briefing with the Chief, he says, "What is shocking to me regarding the corruption of senior management of the NYPD is their belief that they would get away with their crimes." I think, honestly, when I look at all criminals, I always think about that. There was this kid on Staten Island. He had a mortgage scam that he was running. And he would you'd go to him for a mortgage, and then he would take out a second mortgage in your name. And this kid had everything, dude. He had millions of dollars. He had a sick house. His backyard was beautiful. And I'm like, I just don't understand for the life of me how this kid didn't think he was getting caught. I just can't understand it. Like, I don't understand. Like, I'm like, I would never want to do this. So he lived hot and fast for a few years, made a few $1 million. And next thing you know, he's in jail for doing federal time for a long time. And I'm like, I never understood it. And I think, like, when I look at most criminals, I always think that. I'm like, how didn't you think you were going to get caught? Like, where did you think that you were beating the system? And I think these guys are honestly, they're probably, and I keep saying it, they're the stupidest people like that you could put in any position. Never mind to be in charge of the highest levels of city government. They're morons.
Stephen S. Shout out to you, brother. 1013. That's right. Coffee and donuts. We can use that by 1013. NYPD needs help, and you will respond to the call. Show me back. And yeah, thank you so much, brother. Absolutely. John's right. We're continuing public service. That's always been our lives. I served in the Marine Corps. NYPD just want to serve, helping out. John's always been, we always talk about that serving. How can we help people? And that's what we're doing right now. You don't have to be on a city payroll to actually help others. I always, and I hope, obviously our friends and listeners are those type of people that you get more gratitude and more appreciation when you help others before you help yourself. And shout out to Patrick Jordan, great friend to the podcast here, who's got a lot of experience in himself and, really stand up in the face of adversity, especially since he was in such a leadership role. And I agree, talking about how they didn't think they were going to get caught. And I think really what it comes down to, and that's to me, that's the separation of being a criminal and not being a criminal. It's just having a conscience. I think we're all capable of doing a bad act, in a situation. God forbid somebody went after your kids. We're all capable of doing a bad act, maybe violence or something. But when it comes to the criminal enterprise that they're running, I just think it comes down to just a lot of narcissism, thinking like, well, here's what I can do for me. And just thinking, just no conscience, these kind of people that can do this criminal enterprise just think, well, I'm always winning. These are people that just think they'll always win. I'm always winning. Nothing's going to happen to me. And what happens is I think down the road, they are winning. They win. Wow, I got away with this. I got away with that. I guess nothing's going to happen until eventually, it comes down. I always wonder what it's like because I have a conscience. John, you have a conscience. What's it like to live a life of a criminal enterprise and not have these worries? To not have to think about. Ultimately, I think for me, I would say the number one reason. I think everyone has different reasons why they wouldn't commit crime. Obviously, because it's wrong. But for me, the most important thing, I wouldn't want to shame my family because I feel like if I do something that's going to embarrass my family, to me, that's the worst thing, right? Because you protect your good name, right? I think about the Dim family, my father, my mother, my wife, my kids. I'm representative of them. And if I go out and commit a crime, I failed them. I'm John, I'm sure you feel the same way. I feel, I think that the shame of what you would do to your family, what would it inhibit me from committing any crime?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true for a lot of things. I think you go out and there's women there, and I'm like, I wouldn't do that to my wife and like shame my, it might be tempting, but you're not gonna do I think I rely on that a lot, especially as I'm older now, and you start to feel like your own mortality, and you realize you can't just run through brick walls and beat up 15 people. You're like, you start to realize, you start to, you're like, I'm starting to become a little human here, and I think that's a big thing. I think, like I said, being the hero in your own story, trying to be one of, like really representing your name well, and making, to me, I have a lot of people who passed over already, and I feel like I have a lot of set of eyes on me, expecting me to do the right thing always. So I rely on that a lot. Not that I rely on it. I mean, it's just there for me. It's a constant for me. So just real quick, I know we're having some issues. A lot of people saying the stream's not doing too well. But before we get off, we've got about 1,000 people on here. It hasn't really kicked anybody off or anything. Shout out to John Fredericks, by the way, $1.99 to the podcast. Great friend to the podcast. Mike Freed was actually the person that put me on to Sarena. I had interacted with Sarena on X prior, so I was familiar with her, and I was following her for a while, but not, the feeds are crazy, so I don't see a lot of things. So, but I didn't know about her TikTok, and that TikTok was where she really put out those long videos. But just a little breaking news right here. Vehicle pursuits. Patrol Guide 22115. effective February 1st, 2025. In order to enhance and modernize the methods used for vehicle pursuits in the department, new revisions have been made to Patrol Guide Procedure 22115 vehicle pursuits and other various patrol guide and organizational procedures. The revised procedures encompass numerous critical changes to how the department initiates and terminates and documents vehicle pursuits. Note, vehicle pursuits will no longer be authorized when the most serious offense committed or suspected of being committed is a traffic infraction, violation, or non-violent misdemeanor. This is a direct policy to combat the strategy that we all said was stupid that John Shell put in place. So this just came out. What are your thoughts on that, Eric?
I mean, very typical of the NYPD to come out with procedures after they're already having a problem. Always a knee-jerk reaction, right? Just the same thing with Sal Greco being wrongfully terminated, and they came out with a procedure, a little too late, a dollar late, a dollar short, to try to combat their case with Sal Greco. I mean, I don't think this changes anything. Morally, I just don't think they should be involved in these vehicle pursuits at the high rate that they are. I mean, I remember we went over it in an episode, the percentage rate that's increased with these vehicle pursuits is just astronomical. Does this change anything? Do you think it changes anything? I think that right now the vehicle pursuits that they're involved in, they got a major problem. Once this criminal enterprise is taken down, at some point, I do think that there'll be that there's going to be some persecution and prosecution of these cases.
Yeah, again, I think that what we're seeing out of Tish is she's getting ahead of things. She's getting ahead of things that are coming out. This is what that whole Craylow thing is about. This is what this vehicle pursuit thing is about. It's about the perception management campaign and being ahead of it. Oh, well, I told you about it. It's like, no, actually you didn't. The Finance Unfiltered told everybody about it a few months back. In the case of vehicle pursuits, about a year back. With that being said, I like that actually something's being done. I like that there is some confidence back. I'll be honest. I didn't know Sarena from a hole in the wall, but just sitting here and talking to her and listening to her, she seems somebody that's very competent, very conscientious, and does her work diligently. And not knowing, well, I can't say not knowing at all. I do know Jessica Tish. She is the same way. She's competent, she's diligent in her work, she's conscientious when it comes to her work. So I don't get me wrong. Like if I bash her at all, my bashing is that she's still aligning herself with Eric Adams and following along with this nonsense. I think she's a lot smarter than that, and I think she has a lot more capability. But having his scale friends still around you really brings you down way more than a notch.
I'm glad you actually put it that way. That's my point to it, right? Is we see knee-jerk reactions from the police department. That's how most policies actually get enacted with the NYPD. But I think I'd rather we get in front of things, exactly what you said. Let's get in front of things before it becomes a situation instead of having knee-jerk reactions. But that comes down to good leadership. By leadership actually not being afraid to say, hey, listen, these are the observations we made, and we need to make a stance on it. Sherry says, John, good description, Sarena. Absolutely. I was very getting off that topic, talk about getting ahead. And that's what Sarena did, by the way. That's why I want to reflect on that. That's what Sarena did. She said, wait a minute, we got all these cases. She wanted to get in front of it. Instead of saying, hey, here's the knee-jerk reaction, just let's try to comb through these cases. Let's get ahead of it. How do we not get in this position of having so many cases again? And that's why she was innovative and said, you know what? I can have these cases streamed through my office, but bring it back to the command level where someone is back to work, morale is still up, it's not affecting their promotion. And then, you know what? They do face some discipline, but it's eradicated after a year comes off your record. That's what we need. We need leadership that's not afraid to get in front of things, that's innovative. But what does that take? It takes confidence, and it takes the willingness and eagerness to actually take charge rather than sit around being, part of a criminal enterprise in the upper echelon of the NYPD and have people drive you around and just have coffee and go out and do media tours, but actually delve in and do your work and taking a stance on it and being a real leader. And that's management. And unfortunately, what do we see? We see anyone that's competent in this administration, anyone that has moral principle is forced out. Because, John, what do we always say? If you're not in alliance and you're not in compliance, you're out with this administration. If you're not in compliance with Eric Adams, you're not going to last. It doesn't matter about your integrity. It's, are you going to support Eric Adams' mission and his leadership and his cronies? And Sarena laid that out here. So shout out to Sarena. I was really impressed. I thought she seemed like she was super cool. And listen, the bottom line is she had a job where she's going to have to discipline people. And listen, there are people that make mistakes. We all do. Even I made mistakes in my career also. We all did, and we learned from them. So hats off to Sarena. And, it's a pleasure. I would have her here on any time.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. We should definitely have her come when we do any breakdowns of correction stuff. I actually even PD stuff, because I think she would be a good internal affairs voice as well to look at it. So this is.
Go ahead. Sorry.
What were we gonna say?
We didn't get a chance to. It's just too much time. But I would love to get her thoughts on the disciplinary matrix, and I really want to delve into that, especially since she had that aspect of discipline. I'm curious her thoughts on that. So hopefully another day.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is the breaking news that just came out. The department is now moving away from Shell's Angels and their practice of vehicle pursuits. I'm going to read it one more time. I'm going to read the whole thing through because I think we need to understand this, and then we'll get off, and then maybe we do an episode about it tomorrow. A lot of other things we need to talk about. We need to talk about Kathy Hochul now acting as if she's the PC, and they're going to have cops everywhere, which we don't know. I guess they're going to pull them all off the street and put them down in the subways. Bruce Blakeman and Eric Adams working together for a pardon. A lot of other people behind the scenes working to get Eric Adams a pardon, especially a lot of soft, weak Republicans in New York City. I guess Bruce, you're one of them. But this is I think this is like a real complete 180 from where we were just a few months ago, where we're not having it anymore. So again, effective February 1st, 2025, in order to enhance and modernize the methods used for vehicle pursuits in the department, new revisions have been made to the Patrol Guide Procedure 22115, Vehicle Pursuits, and other various Patrol Guide and Organization Guide procedures. The revised procedures encompass numerous critical changes on how the department initiates, terminates, and documents the vehicle pursuits. Note that vehicle pursuits will no longer be authorized when the most serious offense committed or suspected of being committed is a traffic infraction, violation, or non-violent misdemeanor. MOS are reminded that the department policy requires termination of a vehicle pursuit whenever the risk to members of the service and the public outweigh the danger to the community. If the suspect is not immediately apprehended, MOS will be the subject of criticism or disciplinary action for self-termination of a. MOS will not be the subject of criticism or disciplinary action for self-termination of a pursuit if based on judgment that pursuit cannot be continued safely. Additionally, the department form entitled blah, blah, blah. So basically what they're saying here is no more he ran on me because of a misdemeanor or a traffic infraction or to enforce congestion pricing rules and regulation. And also, you will not be targeted if you terminate a pursuit. The person that was targeting people is now in charge of the department and is the highest uniformed member of service. So, those two things, like, it sounds great, but those things don't kind of go together to me, Eric.
Well, that was my point. That's why it doesn't necessarily change anything. It's quite interesting, right? Because we heard through credible sources that are independent from each other that John Shell, who's the chief of the department, the highest uniformed member of the service, is actually the one that's criticizing the police officers for self-terminating a pursuit. So it's quite interesting. This verbiage is in here because it's actually happening right now as we speak. It's actually happening. So this solidifies the rumors that we heard that John Shell is criticizing And when we hear criticizing is very serious when it comes to the upper echelon in the police department. That criticism could change the trajectory of your career. I mean, you have some commanding officer is hearing from John Schell that one of their police officers self-terminated a pursuit, and that police officer embarrassed the precinct or failed their job. What is that commanding officer going to do? He wants to move up in his career. He's not going to side with the police officer that, hey, that was a smart move, unless he really stands on moral principle. Show me that commanding officer. I haven't seen it yet. And for the overwhelming majority are going to butter up to John Schell because they want to move up in their careers. This is responsible and accountable. But it's a shame that we actually have to put that verbiage in there. That verbiage, to me, is reflective of inactive and egotistical maniacs that you actually have to put in that if you self-terminate a pursuit, that you're going to be free from criticism. But will that actually happen with this upper echelon? Absolutely not. I mean, you can put that verbiage in there all you want. But if John Schell, feels slighted or hurts his ego that you terminate a pursuit, well, there's going to be hell to pay.
So, real quick before we get off, you can't see it on this form. It's a little small, but on this form, if you look at the near bottom, this order comes out authority of the chief of department. So the guy who put the plan in place that we're not going to take it anymore has just ordered that you're not going to do what he told you to do, and he threatened to do if you didn't follow what he told you to do, which you knew it was wrong, which always violated the patrol guide. Which we said originally, if you think this is a good thing, change the patrol guide, put your name on the bottom of it. And now not only did they change the patrol guide, it sounds to me that they made that patrol guide procedure much stricter. It sounds like the guy that was telling you to chase cars and was beating up duty captains and lieutenants and sergeants when they were terminating pursuits to protect public safety and not endanger innocent life, not endanger the life of their officers, not endanger the career of their officers, not endanger innocent people walking on New York City streets. It sounds a lot to me like that guy just flipped on, just pointed a finger. It wasn't me. It was them. It was the little guy. It was those rookies in khaki pants that I put out, and I told them they better chase everybody. And it was those sergeants and those lieutenants. It wasn't me. It wasn't me. So I'm going to make a procedure that's going to make it even more restrictive. That procedure literally told you that none of those chases were good. You don't even need to revise it. You just need to follow it. And he didn't do it, and now he's revising it.
John,
I thought it would say police commission at the bottom, dude. So when I got to the end, I'm like, wait, you were talking? I'm like, I don't want to cut you off. I'm like, holy shit.
John,
Chief of department.
I got to laugh because I didn't even see that. That is hysterical. The guy that's advocating on the news goes on media tours and says, we're not having this. All this fake tough guy talk is obviously in a pickle right now. And maybe fake something because he's the guy that is now basically telling you, what he's telling you? You ready? What did we say for the longest time, John? Don't pursue. That's what he just said. Might as well just put on the top. Don't pursue. The same guy who told you not to pursue, who's being, and it's funny, right? You will not face criticism, but criticism comes in. Dude, I can let you retract the whole statement I just made because I didn't even know it was from him. That's hysterical.
Yeah, dude. I mean, like, you know, when you see things in your brain, I just thought it said authority of the police commissioner.
Right.
I read it so many times. Like, I've read things like that so many times. I just thought it was authority of the police commissioner. But as I was getting ready to put it on the screen so you could see the second part of it, I'm like, wait a minute. That doesn't look like police commissioner. What does that say there? Chief of department. Wait, the guy that was bullying everyone into doing pursuits? That's insane. Shout out to Leonard McCabe, $1.99 to the podcast. Coffee and donuts. Or
That's right.
as I like to say,
John.
espresso and cannolis,
Cappuccino.
I like espresso. I drink my coffee like a man, black.
You put sugar in there, though, right?
No, I don't put no sugar. I'm sweet enough.
I don't put any sugar.
Coffee I'm sweet enough. I don't need no more sugar,
I like a little Bailey's in my coffee, too.
Don't do that either. So listen, we got 1,000 people on here. Thanks for joining this morning. If you guys could just do us a favor, like, share out the space, subscribe to the channel. We will be back tomorrow at 08:05. I guess we have a lot to discuss, and I think as the day goes on, there's going to be a lot more to continuously discuss. We are getting ready to do X-Base tomorrow night That's going to be 8 p.m. Eastern time. It's going to be a Finest Unfiltered town hall, the first ever. We'll be joined by Sal Greco. We'll be joined by Marlon Bethel. And for any of you guys that want to come up and speak, feel free. We'll give you the floor. Come up. We'll give you 3-4 minutes. If people have questions for you, possibly longer. But anything you want to touch on, it's really going to be a town hall. Just discuss all of the stuff that's going on in New York City, relating to sex, lies, overtime, corruption, New York City mayoral race. Really, just a brief overview of everything that's been going on in the Adams administration and the NYPD. So, I hope you guys join us. We'll be promoting the flyer tonight, but 8 p.m. on X. Go to Eric's. That's tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Eastern. Go to Eric's X account. Go to my Eric account, Marlon's or Sal's or the podcast. You'll be able to access it anyway through there. You'll see where to do. You'll see like a purple ring around our names. Just click on it, open live video, and then it'll let you actually go in, and then you're in there. And then if you want to speak, you just raise your hand. We'll bring you up to the stage. Say whatever you got to say, whatever's on your mind. You want to curse us out or press us on anything. We're always open to that, So
listen, active retired members especially, it's a great opportunity to have a town hall where your voice can actually be heard, and you don't have to identify who you are if there's any fear of the job. But you can actually, this is an opportunity where you can use your First Amendment and talk about some issues you actually want addressed. The lives with the chats are great. You get to put out some statements and some questions, but this is really an open forum. It's a virtual town hall where you have an opportunity to speak your voice. Don't be shy to grab a mic. Grab that mic. You don't have to be have a silver tongue. Just be honest. Tell us about who you are and what concerns you have, or maybe just want to put in your 2 cents. You have an observation you want to make about what's going on with corruption, anything that's discussed on this topic, or anything you just want to talk about. We just ask that you keep it professional, let people speak, and really keep the conversation flowing. So, we're going to do this monthly. That's the plan going forward. We'll do it once a month. We're going to do it on Thursdays, maybe the last Thursday of each month. So be prepared for that. We thank you, and thank you for staying on board with us, our friends and listeners. And let's get ready for the town hall tomorrow night. For me, it'll be 5 p.m. Pacific time. We got a couple of people on the West Coast right now, so we'll see you there, and we look forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So listen, I think it was a great show today. I had a lot of fun as always. Thank you everybody for tuning in. And we'll be back tomorrow live, 8:05. We'll go over Kathy Holtz's subway plan. We'll go over a few other things. We'll go over this vehicle pursuit policy that's coming out. And we'll get ready for the town hall. Probably keep it pretty brief tomorrow, maybe about an hour. We'll try. But you know how it goes. Me and Eric like to talk, obviously.
You just said an hour there. Yeah, right.
Yeah. Me and Eric like to talk just a little bit. So all right, brother. You want to close this out?
No, I just want to say, I realized too, now John and I have to speak on the phone a lot less because we talk on the phone for hours. Like, well, this could have been a podcast. So now we're just podcasting. I'm sick of you now. By the end of this, oh my god. I think if John sees me call, I forget about it after 3 hours. So he doesn't even pick up. But listen, thank you everybody. We'll see you tomorrow morning. Of course, we'll be live, and we'll see you at night also. So thank you. Check us out. Stay tuned also with the Sal Greco show. And if you want some great analytical data, well, Marlon's going to put out some data. So, we appreciate it. Finest Unfiltered family, friends and listeners. Take care. See you tomorrow. Shout out.
There's a handful of retired officers that don't live in the state that have a lot to say about the dream team, as I like to call it. All of a sudden, they retire and have a master plan on how to fight crime, but nothing to contribute when they were here. They want to come back and be part of the dream team. What can I say?
Law enforcement professionals dedicate their lives to serving and protecting our community. But who's protecting their financial futures? That's where Laidlaw Blue comes in. Our wealth management platform is specifically designed for the law enforcement community. Laidlaw Blue is a division within Laidlaw Wealth Management, run by retired New York City detective John McDermott. His status as a retired detective uniquely positions him to establish a deep connection between Laidlaw Blue and the law enforcement community. Our platform is easy to use and provides a range of financial services, including investment management, retirement planning, and insurance solutions. With Laidlaw Blue, you can secure your financial future and provide for your loved ones. Our team of experienced financial advisors understands the unique challenges and opportunities that law enforcement professionals face. We're here to help you navigate the complexities of financial planning and achieve your goals. Laidlaw Blue. Secure your financial future today. Book a meeting using the QR code displayed or call us directly on 888 901 Blue. That's 888 901 Blue.